Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Smarks of all ages, welcome to another episode of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, are Callum Wiggins.
Hollywood intro there.
Yeah, pretty much. To do something a little bit different. I kind of like it, actually. Might be doing that going forward. I don't know. What do you think about it? Let's see if we get some opinion about that with the other person that is joining us on this. As always, Robert E. Felice.
You know, I was just going to say, I'm the trash man, but, you know, it's I like that intro. It threw me off, but it actually flowed really well. You should stick with it.
Yeah, we might be doing that going forward. I don't know. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also, do that when it comes to the comments for this particular podcast, which is kind of a three-part combo episode. You're getting triple the bang for your buck, which is a pretty good deal considering that this podcast is completely free. Of course, if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things, then you can help us out with the Patreon donations and the join button over there on YouTube. Make sure that you are also subscribed and you ring that little notification bell and you hit the like button. Those are completely free. But if you do want to toss a little spare change our way, you can do so through the Darkcast tier, the Pick Your Poison tier, which we just recently did actually over on Fanboys Anonymous for one of the movie discussions. And we'll actually be talking about that movie today when it comes to that. But you know, any bit of money that you guys head over towards Smark Out Moment or Fanboys Anonymous all helps us keep the lights on here. And of course, the same thing applies to TeePublic and Redbubble for picking up some merchandise or that little thanks button. So if you do want to say thank you and you want to help fund us going forward, then by all means, take part in all those. But what we are doing today, far as this whole trifecta thing is concerned, we are talking about pro wrestlers in movies, and we are going to kind of approach this in three different ways. So generally speaking, we're going to do what we have called before a going over is the segment title, where we just sort of talk in general terms about different things. But we're also going to do a top rope list of our favorite movies that have incorporated a wrestler in some fashion. And we're also going to try to figure out a way to get a Mount Rushmore in here. Maybe two Mount Rushmores, depending on how we want to classify things. But we're not going to do the same sort of layout that we normally do with Mount Rushmores, at the very least, where we do like, okay, that's the prime target for this whole thing. And we're going to have different versions of the Mount Rushmore. And we're going to debate back and forth with everything. Same thing when it comes to the top rope list. We're not going to be going, well, my number 10 is such and such, and you think it's number 6. So like, we'll debate on where the placement is. We're going to treat things a little bit differently this time around. So as we tell you our thoughts, we want to know what you have to say. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us about your favorite things that have been applicable to Hollywood and WWE crossing over. And it doesn't necessarily have to be WWE either. It could be WCW, it could be New Japan, whatever it is. So we are focusing more on movies than on TV, but we will talk TV. And we've done quite a bit of research for this on checking different resource lists and making sure that obviously for instance, I went through all the list of movies that I have and that I've looked through in the past and my letterboxd and everything, and just kind of went like, all right, what are my favorite things? What are my least favorite things? We're going to talk about the good and the bad and everything in between. Starting things off, let's just talk in general about the idea of wrestlers in Hollywood, because the reason why we're doing this is because WrestleMania is going to go to Hollywood again. We've been seeing things like The Miz and Maurice doing parodies of Top Gun Maverick and Bianca Belair and Montez Ford doing Titanic. I don't know why they went all the way back to Titanic for that. It's kind of interesting to me. I think that they should have just focused on like some more recent movies, but whatever. So when you think wrestlers in Hollywood, is there any particular person or any particular movie or anything that comes to your mind?
I wonder. Yeah, it's definitely any one of the movies that Nathan Jones has been an extra in.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah. It's Dwayne Johnson. I think we can safely say is the Hollywood wrestling actor.
Starting to be Bautista for me, which is continuing a weird trend of me gushing over Bautista on this podcast. But Dave's really good in movies, but obviously Rock is the guy?
I honestly tend to think of Hogan, funny enough.
You're
and
older.
I think
Hollywood.
it's right. Yeah. And not only is it because I am a little older than you guys, but also he went into Hollywood sooner than everybody else because he had the opportunity to, because he's older as well. So I immediately, and I don't know why, because I can't even quote anything about the movie. I couldn't tell you anything about it really. I think Hollywood Hogan around the time frame of Three Ninjas.
You know, honestly, that's listen, I didn't make a full list of movies that are just dog shit, but that's one of them.
Yeah, I don't remember liking it even as a kid. There's 4 Three Ninjas movies, which I think is kind of funny. Why not just the 3? Especially because, once you did the first movie, you didn't really need to do the other ones. But that is the kind of thing that I think of immediately. I still haven't gotten out of that range of being like, no, they could just be normal actors and all. Now, if I start diving deep into it, like what we're going to do, then you get into the Bautistas and you get into the John Cenas and the Rocks. And even when it comes to the people that aren't as well known. So there's things like, Kurgan in WWE eventually moved on, became an actor, and he's done far more acting than he's done wrestling matches. There's lots of stunt work people that you wouldn't even know until you started to do the research, like what we had done. There are people that I was like, oh shit, okay, that person's just like a bodyguard in a scene in this movie, or this person happens to be a wrestler and I didn't know that they were a wrestler or something. Kind of both sides of the fence here. Where do you want to start? It's hard to really kind of pinpoint a talking point unless we start going into like, some of the worst or some of the best, or just like one of the surprises when you were looking around, you're like, I didn't know that the person was in this, or anything that you guys want to kind of have as a launching point.
It's hard that I don't want to go into too much detail about what sons that I consider the best, because I want to save that for when we get through to our top road lists, because that's where we're going to be talking about our favorites.
Well, let's start here. Let's talk about just movies about wrestling. What are some of the ones that stick out to you? What are some of your favorites? Are any of them good in your mind?
Well, all right. So the one that immediately sticks out when you talk about movies about wrestling, there's a few that would stick out. Obviously, The Wrestler is a big one to start with. Mickey Rourke leading into that WrestleMania where he was supposed to wrestle Chris Jericho and decided not to because it felt like it would make him look stupid. And so instead he went
doing a whole, after doing a whole movie where you learn to respect the industry.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna fucking do it. What am I, an idiot?
But I haven't actually seen that movie, at least not all the way through.
No?
So I can't really talk too much about it. What I have seen all the way through is Ready to Rumble.
So I have seen The Wrestler. I watched that as part of my usual breakdown, where I used to, at the very least. I haven't been doing it the past couple of years, but I used to watch every movie that was nominated for an Oscar as much as I possibly could. I'm not going to watch best documentary short and stuff, but The Wrestler was something that I was like, oh, this could be like Oscar caliber type of material. And I honestly was a little bit underwhelmed with it. I've never had the urge to rewatch it a second time. My favorite part of the movie was actually Marissa Tomei more than anything else. Ready to Rumble, I've not watched, and that's why that's on my Missed the Smark list to potentially maybe go around.
I don't want to do Mr. Smark on either of those. I want to do full blown. Let's sit down, the three of us, and watch these movies. Both are really good. The Wrestler.
What? You said Ready to Rumble is a good movie.
Okay, all right. In fairness to me, I was 7 years old. Piss off.
That is a movie that buries wrestling more than John Cena buried Austin Theory this week.
I don't know about that. John Cena is in that movie though. I really like it. It's so cheesy. It's so early 2000s. The Wrestler is just actually a very good movie, and I think was maybe the peak of the all wrestlers from the 80s are sad and have drug addiction problems and die early, and that kind of being the stigma of wrestling. And it was way better than I thought it would be. Like, I thought it would just kind of do what most movies do, take the piss out of wrestling and that kind of stuff. The Wrestler was a very powerful story, as powerful as you can get when you're talking about wrestling, at least. And I love that movie.
Now, with Ready to Rumble.
So, well, that movie is difficult in a number of senses, beyond the fact that it's just a bad movie. It's very, very bad comedy. And it's essentially, it paints the two main characters are two absolute no-hopers, losers, and they're like the biggest wrestling fans in the world. And so that by extension, you almost paint the picture of, all wrestling fans are idiots, because these two are the biggest wrestling fans ever, and they are just dolts.
Now, in fairness, no matter what year you're looking at, wrestling does that to its fan base, does it not? Like, they still do it today.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does treat them like idiots, but like this was just putting it on the big screen. Fortunately, very few people watched, but that was to its benefit. But I think that, admittedly, it's not like the worst movie that I've ever seen or anywhere close to that. Really, it's a bad movie, but it's not like absolutely like, oh, I need to wash my eyes out with soap after watching it. Like DDP does a good performance as the main wrestling villain in it.
He's a villain in it, huh?
Yeah, I know, it's odd. He takes on the more heelish side of his persona, even though at the time he was a full-on babyface. But the biggest, obviously, the biggest mark that this movie has from our perspective is just like, well, obviously we're movie and wrestling fans, but like as in the wrestling side of things, which is what the podcast is for, this directly led to David Arquette winning the WCW Championship.
Yeah, that's not the best thing that it can be like, okay, well, at least we got that out of it,
Yeah. So, yeah, this movie had ramifications beyond just being a crappy movie that no one really remembers.
I do still want to watch it at some point, and if we get an opportunity to add that down to the list, and of course, yeah, obviously, if you want to make sure that we do, that's part of the Pick Your Poison tier. We should definitely do like a fan tracks and then review combination of things like we did with No Holds Barred, which is another thing for us to talk about when it comes to pro wrestling movies. And this is starring Hulk Hogan, and we did the Mr. Smark for that before. So if you want our pretty much live reactions to No Holds Barred with our commentary track, watch that back with us and then check out the review, because there are some moments in that movie that are just fantastically awful, like the the obviously the Dookie line and all. No Holds Barred is not going anywhere close to my list of that top rope list. No, I have two top rope lists. I have like more of a featured part and then just a cameo. It's not going on either of them.
You know what's weird about No Holds Barred? I still don't get it. No matter what I do, it's a WWF movie. Why isn't he just Hulk Hogan? Why did they create the character of Rip, who is literally just Hogan with a different hand side and wearing blue? Why didn't you just go full blown? This is the WWF movie, No Holds Barred. Here's all of our guys. Why was it just? It's a very weird movie. I don't know why they fumbled so badly.
It's because Vince hates wrestling, and so he just wanted to try and treat it like somewhat serious by getting proper actors into it. But you have to make Hogan the star, and it doesn't really work. I think, like, as a category we could talk about, obviously you mentioned that Hogan is the guy that's like you first think of when it comes to wrestlers in movies or wrestlers in Hollywood. Hogan has a very bad track record in movies or television appearances.
Yeah, he is not working his way up on that list of like best wrestling actors by any means.
You know what? The biggest issue with Hulk Hogan in the movies that I've found is that he's Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, he can't, like, Dwayne Johnson took some risks when he first took acting seriously. I think the biggest example of that is Be Cool, when he transitions into being this comedic gay bodyguard in the movie. And it's like, okay, that's not The Rock at all. Like, he still has some aspects of it, but it's just, that's not The Rock. And Hogan just couldn't escape being Hogan in movies, because he just was the big guy with muscles, Santa with muscles, even in some instances. Just and yeah, that was just he was Hulk Hogan in some other person's like character for a little while, but he was still like quintessentially Hulk Hogan.
I don't know which Hogan movies that I've seen off the top of my head. I know I've seen at least like some. Like I'm almost positive that I've seen Mr. Nanny, for instance.
I've definitely seen Santa with Muscles.
I haven't seen that one. Pick a poison, everybody.
Again, I wouldn't. But it's not one that I would actively recommend. But again, it's not a terrible movie. But it's just it's called Santa with Muscles. What are you going to expect?
Right? Yeah, you can't go into that.
Mr. Nanny or Santa with Muscles. I'd be willing to watch either.
Have you seen any Hogan movies then?
I've seen Three Ninjas.
I'm looking at his IMDb right now just to double check to see if there's anything that I'm totally missing. I think I might have seen Suburban Commando, but I don't remember for sure about that either. Because we're talking that came out in 91, so I'm like 3 or 4 years old or so. It's hard to kind of, yeah. But most of this, of course, the IMDb is listing a bunch of other things too. It's like, WrestleMania. He's playing the part of Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania and all. But like, I didn't check out Thunder in Paradise. I've never seen.
Because you can't count Hogan Knows Best.
Yeah. A lot of these little like guest spots and stuff. Like, I'm not going to see Dolly or whatever. I have seen Rocky 3. And this is where I get into a thing where I'm sure some people are going to be like, wait, why is that not on your list? I don't remember Rocky 3. That is one of the ones I've only seen I've seen every one of the Rocky movies, but I've seen them all only once. And I think that the franchise itself is kind of fantastic in the way that they always do something. Like each one moves the story forward, and it's kind of a benchmark in a lot of ways from like making sure you're not completely stale, considering how stale these could get. Like they're very bland premises. It's just like, okay, well then Rocky fights this person, but they do something in it each time. But I've never felt the urge to go back and rewatch Rocky 3. So despite how that might be one of the better movies, I have 13 movies on my top 10 and I don't have Rocky 3 on there.
When did Hogan give up trying to be a movie star?
I don't know if he ever has really. I know I can't remember the name of the movie because I only saw like a clip of someone talking about it recently. And I was just doing some research on YouTube, and there was some poor YouTuber who had made it his quest to watch every single Hulk Hogan movie and do like a commentary. Well, not an overall commentary, but do like a review of each one. And he thought he'd gotten to the end, but then he found this weird, like really odd, what's it called? It's called Little Hercules, I think it's called. And it's based around that. There was this thing going around with that like boy with that really young boy with loads of abs.
Yeah,
like he was him. like a young strong man. So he's
they invited him into the ring once from Raw, didn't they?
I think so, maybe. Well, he was the star of that movie, despite not being an actor.
Hercules in 3D.
Yeah, Little Hercules in 3D.
Jeez. When did this come out?
2009. It looked.
Yeah, so this is Hogan about to enter TNA, I think. So he might actually be in TNA, but he's at least on the cusp of joining TNA. He plays Zeus.
Oh my god!
His dad, and Paul White's in it as well. Big Show's in it as well as. He's not even Hades. He's some other god from another mythology.
Marduk.
Yeah, Marduk. Yeah,
Marduk. Maybe
Marduk. Yeah, from a completely different mythology. I don't even know what mythology that is, but it's like. And it's just, it's the green screen. It's all basically set on a green screen stage, like in Olympus or whatever, and it's just awful. And to be fair, considering some of the infomercials that Hogan was in towards the back end of his career, it doesn't surprise me that he would sign up for something of that low quality.
You mean you wouldn't get a Hulk Hogan chicken sandwich, Callum? Is that not what you would eat?
No.
Look, I'm looking at the cast of this. The whole Hogan family's in this. Nick, Linda, Brooke, they're all here. Paul White is here. Robin Givens is here. This looks like a mess that I would absolutely watch it if someone paid me. So, Patreon.
And just a very quick look, I saw like he's in Spy Hard, which is kind of funny, not my favorite of the bunch. And Romeo and Juliet. Okay, sure. I don't think I've seen Muppets from Space.
I'm really interested in this
I have
one.
seen it, yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen too many of the Muppet movies. Oh, I wasn't much of a Muppets guy.
Yeah.
I love the Muppets. Muppets were like that was something that I just grew up with. Obviously not in live in time because that was in like the 60s or 70s. But I was someone bought me like a compilation DVD of them as a kid, and I just watched that religiously.
You were a Muppet baby.
Watched the episode. Yeah, Muppet baby. Yeah.
Baby.
I had a Kermit ventriloquist doll.
Nice.
I believe that.
That I used to mess around
Do
with.
a good voice?
No. I don't know. Kermit. I'm Kermit the Frog here.
That's pretty good.
That's the best I could do.
Oh, that's actually really good.
I think everyone could do Kermit the Frog though, really.
Especially Ray Romano.
Yeah. But so I remember Muppets in Space. He doesn't have a big role in that because he's just a bodyguard for the evil guys that are trying to convince. Well, they're trying to convince Gonzo that he's an alien. And then it turns out Gonzo is an alien by the end of the movie. Spoiler alert for if you haven't seen Muppets in Space. That's basically the premise of it. The whole thing is Gonzo an alien or not? Because no one knows what Gonzo is. So,
does that matter? What the fuck are all the other ones?
Well,
we know Big Bird's a bird. We know Kermit's a frog, but
Kermit's a frog. Like Miss Piggy's a pig.
What's Elmo?
Yeah, Fozzie Bear. Oh, what is that?
Yeah, but that's Sesame Street. That's not Muppets.
Oh wait, yeah. Well, I'm just thinking they're all in general Muppets. So.
Yeah, but yeah, I've watched way too many Muppet movies. I love the well, just to go back to that DVD, like one of the things they had on that DVD, they had two of the biggest episodes they ever did, which was the episode with Elton John, which is huge because Elton John was massive at that point in time in the 70s.
Was he a Muppet or was he just himself?
He was just himself.
Okay,
but himself is kind of a Muppet in some capacity as well. And then the one with Luke Skywalker. They had the cast to start. Well, so the cast to start. They had Mark Hamill. They had Mark Hamill playing both Luke Skywalker and Mark Hamill, which is fantastic. and it was just again, I'm going off on something which isn't wrestling related, so it's just like, but But it's because he essentially Mark Hamill, when he's Mark Hamill, wants to sing and dance and be part of the big show, and Luke Skywalker's basically saying, "No, I'm a space person. Like I'm not going to go and do like song and dance on stage for you." But then you have Chewbacca in it, and C-3PO and R2-D2. Unfortunately, you don't get Han Solo or Leia, but they got it was a good episode.
I'm shocked that they couldn't get Harrison Ford for this.
They didn't do the obvious thing of having Chewie and making him a Muppet.
No, but they did build a whole episode of Pigs in Space around it. So that's good. Yeah.
So there are obviously some other Hulk Hogan movies that are out there and all, but I mean, there's plenty other wrestlers that we can be talking about. So we're going to bounce around quite a bit here, and keep in mind all those things if you want to support us to check them out. If you see anything or hear anything at this point that you're like, oh my God, that sounds awful, or that sounds amazing, I really want these guys to watch it, pick your poison. So we should probably switch over to somebody that has done a lot of work in movies. And at this point, it's not somebody that you necessarily would be like, okay, that's a guy I think of with people in movies, but it's Nathan Jones, who we were talking about earlier. This guy is not memorable at all for pro wrestling, but he pops up so often in so many movies and fills the role that a lot of other people do, which is, I mean, more often than not, pro wrestlers end up being like the bodyguard in something, or they're the monster, or they're, the big tough guy at the prison break that ends up fighting the hero or something. Nathan Jones has made a career off of that. Same thing with Kurgan, Robert Malay. Both of them are so much better as that than they are as wrestlers. And if you go down the list of their IMDb's, you got Kurgan's in Deadpool 2, Nathan Jones is in Mortal Kombat. There's movies that are on the little cameo list that I have separately, like Mad Max Fury Road. Nathan Jones is actually one of the more important of like the random guys that's in that. And it makes me kind of happy to see that these people are able to just like branch out and do those kind of roles, because look, I mean, not many of the people that are in WWE or, let's face it, any kind of company, they're not really like typically fantastic actors, but they can pull these parts off really, really well. And the stunt work and everything, I mean, it's another whole category that we can get into too, but any big brute type roles that come to your mind immediately?
I mean, when I think of Jones in particular, I think of, as you said, Mad Max. There is someone, he was known in WCW as the Ultimate Solution. He played Bane in Batman and Robin, and
Jeep Swenson.
I just think that that's tremendous, because that movie is horrible. But as we've already discussed with Ready to Rumble, I like horrible movies, and that movie is fun.
There's a couple that spring to mind. Great Khali and Get Smart.
That's a movie I have not seen, but I kind of feel like I should.
Yeah. Essentially, he's the big guy that you just can't take down. And I think he eventually ends up siding with the good guys. It's like similar to like Jaws in the James Bond franchise. But yeah, he's just like, obviously the size of him, he's a giant obstacle. And speaking of Bond, I think we'd be remiss to not mention High Chief Peter Maivia.
Yes. You only live twice.
Yeah, the only twice. I know I had it, and then every other Bond movie just came straight to my head at that point.
Not the only pro wrestler in a Bond film, but
he's Odd Job a wrestler as well.
I think that he did do some wrestling, and of course we'll talk about Bautista, and yeah, but You Only Live Twice is on my cameo list. I'll spoil that.
I would say that. Yeah, I would say even though it is a Bond movie, it will not be appearing on my top rope list, because it is. If you go back and listen to our Review to Kill podcast over on Fanboys Anonymous, you will find out that it is my least favorite Bond movie, because it is incredibly racist.
It is. It very much is.
It's pretty racist, guys.
Yeah, I mean, High Chief Peter Maivia has even popped up as a character on Young Rock on a recent episode about filming that movie. And I mean, we might as well talk about that too. When it comes to, Hollywood and movies and pro wrestlers and all that kind of crossover, it's not just the movie side, it is TV. And Young Rock is a show that's kind of bridging the gap in a lot of different ways between a lot of those things, because they've got wrestlers playing non-wrestlers. They've got actors playing the wrestlers. They've got The Rock playing himself, but it's a fictional version of himself, talking about the real life events from the past. It's all over the place, but
guys, help me out here, because I've watched a lot of wrestling. Who was Chad Frost? I've never seen this Chad Frost.
Oh, you didn't see that classic match? Chad Frost versus
Yeah, no. Was it like a 60-minute Iron Man match in Anaheim or something?
I think it was in Rio de Janeiro.
Right.
Yeah, it was for the Intercontinental title. But I might be the only one on this panel that watches Young Rock. Is that true?
I've seen a few episodes, but I want to. It seems like it's a fun show.
It's not the best show in the world, but then again, you know what you're getting into when it comes to it. And it's kind of like that crossover between wholesome and funny, and sometimes it's legitimately funny, sometimes it's just kind of like they're just telling a story and there's really not anything too deep about it. But I really like it for a lot of the wrestling side of it, so that's something that I definitely would recommend to people if they are interested in seeing how do they portray Vince, or how do they portray Randy Savage, or Mick Foley, the guy who playing Mick Foley, he does a really good job with that. And some people do spot on impressions. And then other people, they couldn't be the furthest thing from the world from there. Becky Lynch does a great Cyndi Lauper. But the guy playing Triple H, I don't fully buy, the guy playing Undertaker, I don't know what they were doing when they were casting that. That doesn't work that way. The guy playing Andre, awesome. And when it comes to The Rock and his types of projects, and I look at the list of his movies and TV shows and all, Young Rock is definitely up there for me as far as like one of my favorite things that he's done. And I haven't seen most of it. Like I haven't seen the Fast and the Furious movies. That's probably something that would get a lot of discussion from a lot of other people, but you know, it's got The Rock in it. It's got Roman Reigns in one of the movies. John Cena's in them now. I have not seen them, so I can't talk about Fast and the Furious.
I've never seen any of the movies that feature any of the wrestlers in it. I only watched the first few ones.
I think I watched the first two, so I have not seen any of the ones with wrestlers. I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they do exactly what they're meant to do. And, you know, good for them. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah. There's, I mean, so many different movies that are on this list, TV shows and stuff that I haven't seen. Like, I never saw The Peanut Butter Falcon, which seems like it could be kind of fun. I think it's got Jake Roberts and McFoley in it. I was looking through a list of different movies before, and a lot of these I was just like, this is kind of wild. I might want to check that out. Do you know that Nigel McGuinness did a John Constantine film with Katie Lee Burchill?
No, I did not.
Surprisingly not.
I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's just okay. Like,
it seems like it could be up our alley.
Yeah, that's like a full-on crossover between the superhero stuff with there, whatever. He's apparently also in a short film called not tuberculosis, but hoboculosis.
Hoboculosis.
Hoboculosis. Which I don't know what the hell that could possibly be about, but that sounds
one of the weirdest
interesting.
names I've ever heard for a movie.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, have you guys just veering off into, because that's a stupid name, so it just made me think of like a really dumb wrestling related movie that does have wrestlers in it, or at least one notable wrestler in it. Have you ever either heard or seen of Not Another Romantic Wrestling Comedy?
No.
What?
No, that's the name of the movie. Again, I have to give credit to a lot of Brian Zane, because he's gone through a lot of these really shitty movies, and his reviews of them have really helped me understand some of these ones. So it's a movie about it's terrible. Like, it might be one of the worst. Again, it's worse than Ready to Rumble, far worse than Ready to Rumble. But it's again, it's this story about the girl is part of a wrestling family, and the guy is trying to get into the wrestling family so he becomes a wrestler, even though he's like weak and feeble and all that stuff. And so that's just the whole premise of a really shitty romantic comedy.
China? Is China?
Yeah, China's in it. Yeah, China's in it. Joni Laura, and I believe April Hunter is in it as well.
Huh.
That name sounds familiar. Who is that?
She used to be like made sporadic appearances in the early days of TNA. She used to team with Velvet Sky for a little while.
Is she the one that's married to Luke Gallows?
No, that was Amber. Yeah, Amber O'Neil. Yeah, for that one.
No.
But she's one of like she's pretty tall. I'd say like there's nothing that I know of her doing anything in any prominent wrestling promotion. So.
Something that came up a lot, I think, when I was doing this. It's just like, oh, she's appeared in this and did this. But this movie looks like a really bad B movie.
China has a very mixed track record. I think she's actually done some really good TV cameos. Like,
apparently, she did a She-Hulk thing in a project.
yeah. We're not talking about those types of movies. This isn't
different kind of movie.
Superstar or porn star. So.
Right.
Both. But, no, she was. But she was. She had like a fun little cameo stint on Third Rock from the Sun.
Oh,
I used to
did
really
she?
like that show. Yeah, she played. I can't remember the guy's name. He's the older brother, whatever his name is in the show. She played his girlfriend for a little while.
Nice.
The French Stewart, the actor.
Yeah.
The one who's all like squint. His eyes are like squinting all the time.
Yeah. The funny thing is like he's like obviously weak and spindly, and she's like yeah. So that was where the comedy lie. She also appeared in an episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, if memory serves.
Yeah, Kevin Nash was in that too, was he not?
Wait, Kevin Nash is in a lot of things. That's someone else.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to get to him.
We'll dive deeper into the Kevin Nash side. Yeah,
but Yeah, I think she is one of the ones where she was like, I think Sabrina in one of the episodes just wants to get as like big and strong, and so she can compete with her in the gym. So just uses her magic to do that, because that was kind of the whole thing of the show. She just uses magic to get her own way, and then figures out that she doesn't need the magic to get her own way. and then next week is the exact same story.
Right? Yeah, just copy and paste, and the cat's all like, I'm going to say a sassy comment and just lay on the counter, and that's it. And
today I learned they were still making Sabrina the Teenage Witch as deep as 2002. I thought that would definitely
really
cut off by the turn of the millennium.
She stopped being a teenage witch when she's probably like 33 or something.
Well, I mean, do they ever? Like,
I mean, he is still the heartbreak kid, Shawn Michaels, so, China's all over the place here. There's a lot of women that are on the list, but I've not seen their projects. Like, I've not seen that the Bella Twins were in something called Confessions of a Womanizer. I've not seen that Maurice was in Sharknado 3. Oh, hell no.
Yeah, Chris Jericho was in that too, wasn't he?
Eesh.
Yeah, and Kurt Angle's in Sharknado 2.
Ugh. I'm not going to watch any of those.
Have you never watched Sharknado?
Nope.
You just skip over
it.
when
I've
that was
Sharknado. Yeah, I've watched Sharknado. That was an hour or so of my life that I never got back.
Yeah, Trish was in stuff. Table's been in a thing or two. Maria has been in. I've seen a couple clips of Maria in some different things. It's nothing that like the big standout. Why didn't you have that on your list or anything? I've not seen anything that Ronda Rousey's been in. Again, she's been in Fast and Furious, and that's another thing and everything too. But
Entourage movie as well. That was kind of like her big starting in movies was the Entourage movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen the show either. One of the things that I did see, though, and I know Rob definitely has seen this as well, Stacy Keibler in How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, great episode where she's making Barney choose between suits or her because he had a bad experience with a guy who wore nothing but suits. So Barney didn't want to have to give up his suits, but also really wanted to bang Stacy Keibler. Different time, folks. That's just what it was. And it's got the best musical number probably in the show.
Isn't that the only musical number?
Oh, no. My God, no.
I'm blanking on any of the other ones.
No, they do quite a few musical numbers in How I Met Your Mother, but Nothing Suits Me Like a Suit might be the only blatant ripoff of a song and dance kind of musical number.
They made it was a big spectacle at the time. Yeah.
It was the 100th episode. That is why they made it such a big deal.
I'm surprised they didn't have Neil Patrick Harris do more of that stuff.
Yeah. You think they know he's good at it.
Yeah. And he is really good at it. I mean, if you want to check out like Sweeney Todd or something, he's good in that too. But yeah, I mean, she had a fun part in that. Obviously, she's not the lead character or anything, and that's the way that it is for most of these. But some of the other TV things that I had written down, I was like, oh, I forgot that Big Show was on an episode of Burn Notice. Yeah, it's just one of those like, Big Show's here. Burn Notice is a good show. David Otunga pops up for a scene in She-Hulk, which was fun because for anybody who didn't see the show, she goes on some dates, and a lot of the people are really interested in just She-Hulk, not in Jen Walters. So you got a guy like David Otunga, who's this big jacked up guy, and he's just kind of like talking about himself and everything and trying to like show up She-Hulk. The two main TV things that I had written down, actually there's three main TV things that I had written down that would like stand out of my memory as far as like noteworthy, fun, I really like them appearances. Captain Lou Albano as Mario.
Damn fucking right.
And that's for so many different reasons. So like, first off, it is ridiculous.
So bad.
It's
so good.
Awful. It's so bad. The show itself is, it is what it is. It's a cartoon and all, but the live action pieces of that are terrible, and they're fantastic as well. And also just because there's a long running joke between Peyton and Dace and myself. We went to one of our conventions when we were touring around trying to do some Fanboys Anonymous stuff. There was, I think it was the Cinemassacre group, if I remember correctly. It might have been a different panel, but I'm not too sure. Peyton was the one that was checking out the panel, where out of all the things to ask, this one person had just went, "Hey, do you remember Captain Lou Albano and the Mario show?" And that was like his only question that he asked to the people. So it became like, you finally got a chance to ask a question. That's what you did. So Captain Lou Albano is one of those like, that's always going to be burned in my brain on top of that. But that is something to watch out, especially if you are interested in the Mario sides of things, and stay tuned for much more Mario talk, or Mario, whatever you want to do on that. Because with Mario, the animated film coming out, we are going to be doing some kind of a review on that, I'm sure. But we're also going to be watching the old 1993 Mario movie, doing some kind of a fan tracks for that. So head on over to fanboysanonymous.com, share your support from that channel, hit up that Patreon, so on and so forth. Stay tuned for lots more Mario. The two other ones from the TV side that I had written down that I could 100% recommend. Glow. Good show on top of everything else. And there's some appearances here and there from like Carlito is fun in one episode, and Alex Riley is in one episode and everything. But above and beyond, one of the main characters in the show is played by Awesome Kong. And she plays a character that they eventually give her the nickname and the character of the Welfare Queen. And her character is just kind of a version of Ted DiBiase, but it's all, you're supposed to boo her because she's like, oh, I'm stealing all your money and going on welfare. I'm going to have more kids and take all your money and all. It is the most ridiculous shit. And of course, it's supposed to be like, yeah, this is like horribly racist and this is terrible. But that's, what they used to do with those gimmicks. And they make fun of how, like, of course, the Asian is playing an Asian racist character and so on and so forth. And they would even want to switch it up at some point. It's like, well, why doesn't this person be welfare queen and whatever? I absolutely love what Kia Stevens does in that show. She's actually a legitimately good actress in it too. Like, she chews the scene here and there and she nails the dramatic parts too.
I think that was back when Netflix was still doing some pretty decent original shows, and they weren't like just pumping them out like nothing, so it felt special. And I can't believe they didn't just let them do the final season.
I can't believe that WWE didn't do any kind of real crossover with them.
They were there, and I was like, oh, Naomi's doing the whole Feel the Glow thing. Like, dude, do it. This is the part where you actually cross over and it's welcomed.
Right.
Do the thing, and they didn't do the thing.
The other one I could talk about, and I recommend it more than almost anything else except for the Glow thing, Roddy Piper in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is fucking hilarious. That episode is one of my absolute favorite episodes. And, not to spoil anything really, because the show's not something that you can really spoil all that much. The gang decides that they want to put on a wrestling show. And the episode starts off with them talking about how Hulk Hogan has the skin of a hot dog. And, I think they say like he's got the skin of a hot dog and the hair of like a little girl's doll or something. But they decide to get into like pro wrestling. They want to do these characters. Rob mentioned earlier, I'm the Trash Man is part of this whole thing. But Piper plays a character called Madman in it. And he's got my favorite line in the whole thing. He's like, they go like, oh my God, this guy's actually nuts. Like, he's actually a madman. We think that he's gonna like kill us or something. And the one character Charlie, he's like, this guy's got a bucket of chestnuts in the back of his car. Who has a bucket of chestnuts in his car and whatever? But he goes up to him, he goes, you guys remind me of my kids, man. And the one goes, oh, man, you got kids? And he goes, nah, not anymore. And then just walks away. They're like, what the hell does that mean? Definitely go out of your way and watch that. Roddy Piper is fucking great in that show. That show itself, if you don't like that show, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Piper seemed destined to be one of the real crossovers. And I just think that in the 80s, people weren't ready for it. But he could have easily, between that and obviously They Live was probably his most famous role.
Now, that's a movie I have not seen.
Oh, you haven't seen a lot of these that I would think that you would see, because these are like big movies that also cross over into wrestling.
Yeah, that's on my to-do list is to watch that. Again, pick your poison. But yeah, I've heard so many good things about They Live. It's obviously like a cult classic. Never been one that I've felt the need to actually just like sit down and watch though. I might have to get around to that pretty soon. Have you guys both seen it?
I have seen it.
No, it's one that's escaped me.
It's good enough that it's. I'll be talking about it later.
It's a potential list thing. Here's a fun little thing to talk about when it comes to trivia. There are 3 wrestlers that have played a character in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name all 3?
I can. Sheamus,
Mm-hmm.
John Cena, and Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Can you name their characters?
Sheamus was Rocksteady, was he not?
Mm-hmm.
John Cena will also be Rocksteady.
Yeah, he's voicing Rocksteady in the upcoming thing. That looks kind of, the animation's a little weird.
I think he also one of the Turtles at some point. Because I think he had done one of the newer ones that I haven't seen. And I know that Sheamus Rocksteady and obviously Big Sexy was Super Shredder.
I will spoil it. One of them is on my cameo list.
One of them is just on my list.
Just straight up on your list. It was close for Out of the Shadows for me. But that is like one of my first forays into a wrestler being in a movie. And I didn't know that, for the longest time as a kid. I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles too. And God knows how many years it took for me to be like, that's Kevin Nash is Super Shredder? That's fucking crazy. But yeah, Super Shredder. Awesome. Fucking love that movie. So good. I have a list of a whole bunch of little things I'm sure we can't dive deeper into because there's nothing really to talk about, but just interesting little notes of like Hayde Vanson is a power plant security guy in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Never would have picked him out of a crowd.
Well, I'm not surprised. How much time did you get to see him?
He had one promo. He had one promo on an episode of SmackDown.
Right, 30 seconds on TV. That's about it. Jasmine St. Clair from ECW and from some other things. From a couple of appearances on Superstar Report Star, is in a movie called, and I thought that this was hilarious, Grand Auto Theft LA. Not Grand Theft Auto, Grand Auto Theft. They even subtitled it The Game Where Everyone Gets Played. Like, oh God, they are really trying to get people to just look at the cover and potentially get that movie. John Trosk is a wrestler, apparently. I don't know. He's a stuntman in Wolf of Wall Street. Taryn Terrell has done a ton of stunt work in a lot of movies that I was completely unaware of because stunt work is not something that people celebrate all that much, which it really should get its own category at the Oscars. I don't understand why best stunt sequence is not a thing, but NXT's Kendall Sky did some stunt work for Wonder Woman. It's an overrated movie, but still. Somebody named Justice Smith played a frost giant brute in Thor. Lana Starr, do you know who that is? She seems like she's been quite a bit. She is Stan Lee's side piece in Iron Man, and she was in Pay It Forward. 2 good movies. Trinity, apparently, did the stunt work for Jennifer Garner in the Ben Affleck Daredevil film.
That adds up.
Like, huh.
She was in TNA for a while, and yeah, I think that adds up.
And apparently Candice Michelle is somewhere in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which is a movie that I recommend for sure. Bam Bam Bigelow's in Escape from New York? Huh.
And Candice Michelle's also in a Dodgeball, a True Underdog Story. So
another movie I haven't seen.
I like it.
It's a very much if you like the Ben Stiller stuff, it seems like that's the peak of that, right?
I mean, he's like the biggest force of personality in the movie, but it's it's essentially if you're into that era where basically Vince Vaughn was in pretty much every movie.
Yeah. Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, Ben Stiller, yeah.
Yeah.
The Brat Pack, is that what they're called? Or is that a different group?
No, that's cool.
Yeah, I think that's a different group.
It's weird how certain acts just appeared in everything for a while. It's even spawned in anything today. But like for a while, he was one of the biggest stars Hollywood had.
Yeah, you go through it cycles. But there's also WoW's Delta Lotta Pain.
I love that name. I don't know if
It's such a good name.
That's such a good name.
Candace is her name. She's in a ton of movies that I like, including Let's Be Cops, which is one of those things that nobody knows, but I was like, this is actually a pretty funny movie. Scary Movie 3, she's in. She does some stunt work for that and everything. Obviously, stunt work stuff is not the biggest, most glamorous thing out there compared to even something like Triple H is in Blade Trinity. I've not seen Blade Trinity because I don't want to waste my time. Is he good in it? Is he bad in it?
He's doing the wrestler cameo where, he's the big brute and he does a running power slam and not like, oh boy, Triple H is the next big, movie star. But he tried. The Chaperone exists. Have you guys watched The Chaperone?
I have not seen a single WWE film.
No, just me. I'm the only mark here. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, fuck.
That could be its own separate category. Yeah,
we might as well talk about it a
little
bit now. So, the WWE films it's a failure, right? It didn't achieve what they probably hoped it would.
I think WWE Studios, hopefully, was the last one where they just go, okay, can we just do wrestling? They suck at everything else.
It's the weirdest thing for me is the fact that like they create this thing to be star-making vehicles for some of their wrestlers to put them on the big screen, and yet then like The Rock left after becoming like a big star in Hollywood, and they seem to resent that completely, and yet they create these vehicle. I guess the idea was, okay, we'll create these movies and we'll become big enough that you can still wrestle and be in these movies and get your Hollywood fix that way. And yet,
all it did was make The Miz the star of the Marine. Like, because he's the only one who did a lot of them. Like Edge was in one. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I watched it. He was the only like half decent actor because he had already done some prior stuff. Triple H was awful in The Chaperone. Big Show was awful in Knucklehead. Wasn't Austin in one of their movies?
The Condemned, I think.
That's at least he understood his role of like, I'm gonna be action movie guy.
Yeah, I mean, Scorpion King is the first WWE movie, isn't it?
They have some kind of credit there, but I'm sure it's not.
It may not be strictly them, but it's like that's one of them, and yeah, I mean, I would say that having watched The Scorpion King, I'm actually surprised The Rock made it as big as he did. Because that movie not
for a while, though.
Yeah, but that movie's not good.
I have not seen that either
for a while, and I think after the last few years where he's kind of been a bit overexposed, you might see a bit of a dip again.
Yeah. But I will say that I have seen very few WWE movies. I haven't seen zero because I have seen See No Evil, which isn't good.
You think it would have been better if Kane had a 3-feet penis?
God, that's...
I bet.
The mind of Vincent Mann just baffles me. Like, but yeah, that wasn't a great movie. I know they did a Leprechaun reboot with Hornswoggle.
And you couldn't even tell it was Hornswoggle, poor guy. He was pretty upset about that.
You couldn't tell it was like too much makeup.
Completely covered up, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, you can't. I mean, I guess you can vaguely tell that the original Leprechaun is Warwick Davis, but it's not overly apparent.
So, one thing we have seen that had a bit of a tie to WWE Studios is that movie Rumble from like last year. That animated.
Oh, that's movie. Right. That animated movie, yeah.
That was so bad. That was so not even closely tied to WWE. We thought we were getting a completely different movie. It just wasn't good. I'm going through all the WWE Studios films.
You've probably
See what
seen
else-
like Scooby-Doo wrestling, WrestleMania mystery or
Oh, we
something,
can
right?
get into all of those. 'Cause I've obviously seen all the Warner Brothers crossovers. I saw WrestleMania Mystery, Scooby-Doo, W and Scooby-Doo, Curse of the Speed Demon, saw that. They were all relatively fun. You know what you're getting, you know what you're getting. Like, it felt weird to me always that they were just like, let's revive the Flintstones for WWE. Like, where's the connection here? But they were fun. I enjoy the fact that like you get to see, AJ Lee hanging around with Shaggy and Scooby, or for some reason Sin Cara was in that movie. He's hanging around with Shaggy and Scooby. Fun for me. One weird note is that on all TV appearances, it's never WrestleMania. It's Scooby-Doo and the Mystery of Superstar Mania. And I don't know why wrestling is a dirty word on Cartoon Network, or if like Superstar Mania is a floated name for WrestleMania, if they ever just decided to go full sports entertainment and change it completely, but that's a thing.
Maybe it's like a copyright type thing, like the whole you can't say the Super Bowl, you have to call it the big game.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah,
That's so like
that
they
weird
work
shit.
with WWE. I just don't understand why
Yeah,
that would be an issue.
you would think that would be part of the contract of like, well, we should be able to market the movie based off of its title.
I liked the animated ones, but of course I did. I did not like the Surfs Up Wave Mania. That was a bit silly, and I would recommend everybody stay away from that. But if you like the Flintstones and Jetsons and you know what you're getting into, I'd watch that.
Yeah. I mean, just looking through this list of just movies, just a whole lot of nothing. Just loads of movies that I wouldn't even dream of watching. How'd they get Halle Berry to be in one of these movies?
Which one?
The Call, I think, is that one.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I think that's the name of it. Is it like, I think Otunga's in that one?
Yeah. Where she's like she's a first responder just on a call with someone during an emergency.
Oh,
Sounds
yes. How did they get Halle Berry? How did they manage to attach themselves to the Halle Berry movie? I wonder if it's like one of those, hey, if you want one of our guys, you have to give us a studio credit.
Yeah. I will say a few of them are standing out to me just because if you vaguely watched them or just like know that they're notoriously bad, which is Santa's Little Helper.
Ugh, yeah.
which got released, believe it or not, on July 24th.
Christmas in July?
Christmas movie. Yeah, Christmas in July.
Yeah.
Straight to video, of course, because pretty much a half of these
one of
videos
these
are straight
are.
to video. And
Generally
the
speaking, the rule of thumb is if something's a direct to video, you don't need to see it. For any type of movie that's out there, whether it's like an animated sequel or if it's like, especially if it comes to like an action movie or something, like, no, it's gonna be bad.
Oh, I mean, there are some about the trend. I will stand and say that The Lion King 2 is a good movie. But, that's just one of those ones.
It's
But
not
maybe
as bad as they would have you believe.
No.
Because it's straight to
I had
here's
fun
one
with
that-
Aladdin too, back when I was a kid.
And here's the one that didn't go straight to video was The Resurrection of Gavin Stone. Shawn Michaels in it.
What?
Like,
Was
'cause
that
you can't put those Christian faith movies straight to video.
That's right. That's the whole.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the guy from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Fucking hell.
not a movie
Yeah.
that I have any interest in watching. Any of them, really, for the most part. The only one that I actually bothered to be like, I think I might check that out is Slight, but I still haven't actually watched it.
Not even full about Fighting With My Family either.
So is that technically into WWE Studios? Because that
Yeah,
I went.
It's in the lineup. Yeah.
Well, then I did see that one. I actually saw that in theaters. A lot of people are in that. Zelina Vega plays AJ Lee in it. Of course, The Rock is in it. Big Show pops up. It's all about Soraya. So you have Florence Pugh playing her. And for the most part, it's not bad. It's not the type of movie that I would be like, okay, everybody has to go see it or anything. But they did a good enough job to tell a story that I don't think necessarily needed to be told 100%. But, yeah, I mean,
really didn't.
They felt the need to put that out there. And, I mean, when you go into it as a pro wrestling fan, I'm sure you get a lot more out of it than if you went into it as just a completely unrelated person the way that like if I were to watch like a tennis movie, like I have no idea anything about tennis, or a movie about like I don't know, like I've never seen the movie Moneyball, for instance. I'm not a big baseball guy. Maybe that ends up being like, whoa, that story is like brought to the screen or whatever. With Fighting With My Family, of course, we're wrestling fans. And that would be one of the few ones that I'd be like, look, if you want to watch a movie about wrestling, that's all right.
Yeah, I wasn't. I'd only seen the trailers and clips, and I sort of got the vibe of kind of what they do for Young Rock, where it's like, all right, you're taking liberties, and as Tony said, I don't really think it was a story that needed to be told at that moment. So I've never really sat down to watch it. I'll get around to it eventually.
I'm sure I have got like reviews up somewhere. I don't know if I have it up on Fanboys or if I have it on Smark Out Moment or eWrestling News, but I know I have something up on there. So browse around. You'll check out my like immediate thoughts on that. Anybody? There's a lot of movies on this list that I've not seen. Some that I'm sure that you guys haven't either. Like McGruber has apparently a lot of wrestlers in it.
Yeah, it was like Jericho, Big Show, Coley, MVP, Mark Henry.
They play like mercenaries and stuff.
Yeah, I've never seen McGruber.
I only remember that he hosted Raw.
I typically have no like interest in watching a movie that, say for instance, like the movies that Stone Cold has been in, where it's just like, okay, the wrestler's playing the tough wrestler type. Like I don't really need to see The Expendables with Austin in it, you know?
I mean, dude, you're not watching The Expendables for Steve Austin.
Yeah. The first Expendables I did watch. The movie's absolutely absurd, and it's exactly what you want it to be. But, you know, John Morrison's been in a bunch of movies. Haven't seen any of them. And
I mean, you haven't seen WrestleMania about the dog?
No, I haven't.
Stick out, buddy.
Yeah, there are a lot of those movies, and of course, we could do a whole podcast about those in general, but like, I typically do want to watch more when it comes to that they actually are playing a character, and it seems like they put like some actual investment in there. So you're less likely to see me watch more than a clip of Kimberly Page and 40-Year-Old Virgin for obvious reasons. You're more likely to see me watching something like, say, we've got a couple of different people here that we could get like much deeper into. The Rock has been in a lot, and Kevin Nash has been in a lot of movies. Bautista's been in a lot of movies. John Cena's been in a lot of movies. Here's one that I want to mention to talk about something that is going to be pretty high up on my top rope list. Jesse Ventura in Predator. It's one of the few examples of wrestler plays big brute whatever type guy that I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking here for it. He is so good in that movie as just this over the top cigar chomping badass type guy. I mean, he's got one of the best lines in the movie. I ain't got time to bleed. It's perfect. He is so good in that, and he's good in some other roles here and there too. But Predator is very high up on my list.
I like Jesse Ventura. Like he's another one who I think, if the infrastructure that the people have now, where they're basically throwing these guys at Hollywood, had Jesse Ventura had that when he was, younger, I think he would have been a pretty memorable action movie star.
I've not seen enough of the Jesse Ventura movies to comment one way or the other, really.
He's in a couple. I mean, he's in Running Man. He's in Batman and Robin, we mentioned. Some one-off type bits. He's not like the main character or anything, but man, there's so many things on this list too. That's the thing. We can't even get into a lot of these. We're already over an hour in.
Doom yet? Doom is a great movie.
Have not seen Doom.
The Rock's magnum opus.
I never even liked the game Doom, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, it's blasphemy." So yeah, it never appealed to me. So when the movie came out, I was like, that makes sense that they would try to do a movie based off of that. It seems like it's got some some lore and some story to it. And then when I started to see clips, I'm like, ooh, this isn't looking good. Is it really as awful as it seems like it is?
It's a pretty bad movie, yeah. It's a pretty bad movie. I think it almost killed his Hollywood career altogether.
Have you seen it, Callum?
Sorry, what was that?
The movie Doom?
Doom with The Rock.
Oh, no, never seen Doom.
Maybe that's a future watch along. I know that you have seen.
I've seen very few Rock movies, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies Rock has had to apologize for, let's talk about Black Adam.
Sucks.
I've not watched that either.
I will differ from Tony here. I thought it was actually perfectly fine. I think it's way too many people overreacted. It was fine.
The movie sucks bad enough that I don't think I'm going to see this new Shazam movie in theaters.
The movie sucks bad enough that you apologized to your wife.
Oh, I did. I apologized to her in the movies. Multiple times while watching the movie, I leaned over to her and I was just like, I'm so sorry that we're seeing this.
I watched it from the comfort of my couch. I thought it was fine.
The thing is that they had
scene is the only thing that really mattered, and it's not even happening anymore.
But... Yeah, it mattered for like a week and a half, and then everything went. Never mind. So it's not good. I mean, the stuff I talked about before. Go back and check out the hot tags where I talked about it a little bit. They had like 11 years to make this movie. That was the best that they could come up with. Giant middle finger to that movie. The Rock has some good ones, some bad ones. Some of the things that he is in, he's playing a character that's basically just The Rock, which seems like it is the case for a lot of it. So if you like that a lot, then you'll probably like something like Central Intelligence, for instance, or Red Notice, or...
You watched Red Notice. Go look at the fan tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got an egg in it. Yeah, fucking egg.
3 eggs.
The type of movie that when we were watching it, we ended up having the consensus afterward of like, if they did another one of these, I'd watch Red Notice too.
Yeah,
talk about two of the hottest actors in the world having zero sexual chemistry.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Did not seem like that was planned out as well. They probably would have had better chemistry if they would have just kept it to be him and Ryan Reynolds at the romance. But you know, I mean, there's that. There's obviously you get into things like I haven't seen Rampage, but you know, it is what it is. San Andreas, same generic action movie type stuff.
The Rock is like the last. It's because it's whatever The Rock does, and the Fast and the Furious movies. They're kind of like the last of the hey, big action movie, pew pew, big explosion. You know, like that's what The Rock gives you.
He also does things like Moana.
That's on my list. That I'll just say right now, it's on my list. Moana's a fucking great movie. And it's maybe the best thing he's done because you're not looking at The Rock. The Rock is just playing a character in an animated movie.
Yeah, he's not playing quite literally The Rock like he is in everything else for the most part. We were not the biggest fans of Jungle Cruise.
No. We were big fans, or at least I was, of a DC League of Super Pets.
That was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah, I like that. One thing I do not like, and this isn't his fault, but this is something that's like double wrestler related. How the fuck do you have G.I. Joe Retaliation and The Rock is in the movie and Sergeant fucking Slaughter is not in the movie? He is a G.I. Joe character. They made him a G.I. He was in the cartoon. How is Sergeant Slaughter not in G.I. Joe Retaliation?
I imagine they reached out.
That is one of the most baffling things that I have for anything that's on any of these movies, as far as like plot holes or just like, why did they think that Dune was interesting? When shut that movie off in the fucking plane, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm already 50 minutes in and nothing's happened. That's another whole thing. Talk about Bautista with that. But the G.I. Joe Retaliation thing, I'm just like, that is such a softball. And you didn't do it? What? He's funny in Baywatch.
Baywatch was another movie he nearly had to apologize for.
He's funny enough. Yeah, it is what it is.
It's not. It won't be Zac Efron's only time on screen with a wrestler, though.
That's right. We got that movie coming out. When's it come out? Next year, I think.
We got I think
the Von Erich movie is what we're talking about.
The Von Erich movie might be late this year, and the Ricky Stenicki could be some point this year on Amazon with John Cena, Zac Efron, and Jim Carrey. That one I am very much looking forward to.
Sounds just interesting, yeah. I'm going to put a pin in talking about the Jumanji movies because they are, at least one of them is going to be on my list.
I've never seen them.
Really? I would recommend them. I didn't know that The Rock was the Free Guy. He just plays a character that's like got a mask on or something, but I thought it was a pretty funny movie. We didn't mention Goldberg Santa Slay.
I've seen that movie. It's not
movie.
The worst. It's not a terrible horror movie. I think it's actually pretty. It's funny in places, and he plays the character actually pretty well.
That's one that I definitely.
Is he a better Santa with muscles than Hulk Hogan?
I would say so.
I would like to do a fan tracks of that at some point for sure. You, Callum, had mentioned before a movie that might be on your list already, so I might be jumping ahead a little bit. But George Animal Steel and Ed Wood.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to talk about that until we get onto the list. But it is an interesting cameo. So essentially, it's an interesting one because it's a wrestler cameoing in a movie where he plays the role of a wrestler that did actually cameo in the movie that it's parodying. It's a weird way of putting it. So essentially, he plays a wrestler who was found by Ed Wood to then be the star of a movie that Ed Wood, the director, made. And that actual movie did have a wrestler, but it's a not very famous wrestler, like a Swedish guy called Tor Johnson, who was starred in Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is very widely renowned as one of the worst movies ever made. Like, just critically seen as, like, pretty much every Ed Wood movie is one of the worst movies that's ever made. But that's but I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get onto the list, because I do want to dive into that movie a bit.
So as far as I'm concerned, we could start getting into some of the list things. Is there anything that you guys want to bounce around with at any point? But when we don't do the list, because I mean, we don't know what our lists are, so we might end up talking about other topics and stuff. But if we do, obviously we can, jump around here and there.
I think it's a good time to go into the list because it brings up some of our favorite movies, and so we'll get to discuss them a little bit.
Like, we haven't specifically talked about like some really big movies and some really big
exactly.
like
try to avoid it.
Try to hold off on some of that stuff. I will say though, before we get into that, just to remind everybody of some other things that are happening right now, we've got the Smark Madness tournament going on for smark@moment.com. So if you want to vote on who the best wrestling family dynasty is of all time, then go ahead and do that, because we're on round 1 at the moment, and that is going to switch over to round 2 at the beginning of Friday or maybe Thursday night or so. So you got a little bit more time where you can still cast your votes. Also, while you're over there, check the sidebar of smark@moment.com, and you will see that we have the Road to WrestleMania contest going on, where 3 people are going to win a Dusty Rhodes Funko Pop. This is all sponsored by fun.com, so check them out over at fun.com. And if you want to enter the contest, there are tons of different ways for you to score different points, whether it comes to retweeting things or subscribing or even picking up some merchandise, like I had mentioned before on Redbubble or TeePublic, becoming a Patreon subscriber, so on and so forth. So Dusty Rhodes, the American dream for a lot of people is to go to Hollywood. He is not somebody that I think has been in any kind of movie, at least that I'm not aware of.
God knows he tried. Well, he was in the wrestler that they made with Vern Gagne in the AWA.
Now, he had said before that he wanted Cody to get into movies. Like, why don't you just do movies? And Cody has done some TV stuff here and there, and we could talk about things like, hey, this person popped up in Smallville, this person popped up in Arrow. Not the biggest cameos in the world or anything, but they're fun here and there. There's the Heels TV show. It's actually a pretty decent TV show. That has CM Punk in it, and Stephen Amell is the main driving force of that show, and he obviously has some wrestling connections too. So let's get into some of our lists here, and I will mention that I have 2 separate lists. One of them being more on like the cameo side of things, one of them being like featured part. And the way that I clarified it was future parts like, all right, they actually have dialogue in the movie more than anything else. One of the movies that I did not end up putting on my runner-up lists, but it was like kind of close, was Bumblebee with John Cena. And the reason why I didn't is because the more I thought about it, I was like, no, you know what? Fuck that movie. They basically just redid the first Transformers, but not as good. And then everybody acted like it was good because they forgot that the first Transformers was good, and then the rest of them sucked. So no, screw that movie.
That's classic marketing.
Yeah, just redo the thing from before and go, this time it's Haley Steinfeld. Don't you like it better? But I will say one of my close to the top 10 for the featured part thing for me, didn't quite make the list though, was Glass Onion. Now that is the most recent Knives Out movie. Bautista's in it. He is great in it. Definitely recommend it. He has proven himself to be very much like, look, I'm going to have fun acting. I'm going to do a lot of different roles. I'm going to switch over from doing like, yeah, he's done the generic action thing before. He did like the comedy action that, The Rock did like that. God, what's the name of the movie with the little girl?
The Tooth Fairy.
Tooth Fairy, yeah. So it's like,
I've also been thinking of the game plan. He did a couple movies with little girls.
And Bautista did the thing where that was like, okay, like My Spy, I think was the name of it.
Yep. And they're making a sequel.
Huh. Didn't see it. Don't think I'm going to. But he's branched out and he's done things like Army of the Dead, but then he's also done Dune, like I mentioned before. I haven't seen Blade Runner 2049. I've heard it's good. It's just one of those movies I haven't gotten around to watching. He very much has been doing more acting. And he's really fun in Glass Onion. He's arguably the best character of the whole thing. You guys check that out?
Not yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. So,
did you guys see the first Knives Out?
Yes.
All right. So if you like the first Knives Out, you'll like Glass Onion. It's not as good as the first Knives Out, but it's very similar as far as like they keep the tone, they keep like the surprises and everything. I like it. I really like Bautista in it too.
Did you enjoy him interacting with Daniel Craig in Glass Onion more than in Spectre?
Spoiler alert, Spectre is my number 7. One of the other movies that I have that's in my like honorable mentions is the second of the Jumanji sequels, which sounds kind of strange. It's technically Jumanji 3, but it's really kind of Jumanji 2. But it's Jumanji The Next Level. That's not as good as the other one, and I'll just say it. Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle is my number 8 on my list, because that was a movie that I wasn't the biggest fan of as a kid, the original Jumanji. I thought it was fine, but if I'm going to go with a Robin Williams movie, I'm going to go with Mrs. Doubtfire, or I'm going to go with even like a Patch Adams or something. Jumanji was not my favorite. And when they decided that they were going to do a sequel to it, I was like, oh, God, this is going to be it's just ridiculous. And it's not even going to have Robin Williams in it. And it's just going to be about like a video game. And this is, and then I watched it and I was like, this is pretty fucking good. I like it better than the first one. Enough that I was like, oh, I'll happily see Jumanji The Next Level. And if they do another one of these, yeah, I'll happily see that one too. Thumbs up on those.
Cool.
You haven't seen either of them, right?
I have not seen either of them.
What about you, Callum?
I've seen both, yeah.
Yeah. What'd you think?
We'll talk about them.
Are they higher up on your list?
Yeah.
Quite a bit. All right.
Well, not quite a bit higher. Well, I'll talk about like Jumanji: The Next Level is my number 6, and Jumanji the original, the
Welcome to the Jungle.
Yeah, Welcome to the Jungle isn't on my list.
It isn't?
No, I much prefer the sequel to the first one.
So why is that?
I really like Danny DeVito and Danny Glover in it. I think that their dynamic and The Rock playing Danny DeVito is some of the funniest shit in movies. It's just so much fun, and I like the fact that there is that narrative underlying it about Danny Glover's character. Again, I don't want to spoil it too much for Rob or anything like that, but the underlying story about Danny Glover and Danny DeVito's characters and the relationship between them and how it kind of ends. I think that was kind of like a really poignant ending. Whereas I think the first movie is better in terms of like the action and overall like things behind it. I think that this one had a more deep story to it. I kind of like the fact that the main character goes back into the game because of just like he just doesn't feel anything at the moment without being there, and that just drags him back into the game, even though they shouldn't never be going back into there. So I thought that the overall, I really like the performances. Really like Awkwafina in it as well. Thought she was hilarious in it.
Of course, Jack Black's doing his thing, and
yeah,
Karen Gillan's good in them too. Like you know, she gets overlooked by a lot of the other ones because they're bigger. You know, if you have a room and Kevin Hart's in it, you're probably going to be paying attention to Kevin Hart because he's going to be the loudest. But Karen Gillan's good, Kevin Hart's good. Yeah, even the people like Madison Eisman, they're good in their little parts.
Yeah. So I just always preferred the sequel to the first one.
My number 11 on my list may be on Rob's, and I was surprised, and I was like, oh man, this might have gotten my number 10 if I just, rearranged them a little bit and said like, that one doesn't count or something. But my number 11 is Vacation Friends with John Cena.
It is not on my list, but it really could be because
that was surprisingly fun.
Vacation Friends was really good. John Cena, that's why I'm very excited to see him interacting with Jim Carrey, because John Cena in comedy movies, I think he's found his niche. And it's a very good movie, and I suggest, again, go to Fanboys Anonymous, check out the fan tracks. Tony and I watched that for the first time together. So, yeah, Vacation Friends is great.
Yeah, that was a movie that we're just like, you know what, why don't we check out the John Cena thing? Because maybe there's a good couple of jokes in there. And maybe there isn't, but at least we get a fan tracks. It is what it is. And then we ended up like, while we're watching it, we're like, this is actually, he's putting on a pretty damn good performance in here for playing this type of character. And overall, if you watch the trailer for that movie and you think that you would be interested in checking it out, check it out. If you watch it and you think that looks like the biggest piece of garbage, you're not going to like the movie. But it's pretty fun, I mean, we all like a wide range of different movies. So obviously, when you ask me what's the best movie of all time, and I tell you about The Shawshank Redemption, it's not close to The Shawshank Redemption. But for being that type of like goofy, low stakes, bunch of people cracking jokes type of movie, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's actually, I think, still in my movie collection from when I had gotten that. So, that didn't quite make the list, but my number 10 is definitely on Callum's.
I'm interested.
And it might even be your number 1. My number 10 is The Princess Bride.
Yeah, we'll hold fire on that one for a little bit.
Let's put a pin in that one. My number 9 is a recent movie. And
we're not going to go through all our 10s. Just go around the houses like that.
Oh yeah, that's right. We already done that way. So
it's a road list, though.
I'm forgetting that it's a top rope list as well. Yeah. So yeah, that was my number 10. Callum, what do you got?
I get a bit shellacked for this one. I don't know whether it'd be on either of your 2 lists, but my number 10 is Nacho Libre.
I thought about it. And
I watched it as a kid. I thought it was funny, and it's lowbrow. Don't get me wrong. I haven't watched it in a long time, so if I ever did go back and watch it, I'd probably think, oh, this is really dumb and stupid. But at the time, like, Jack Black was just doing everything, and he's a funny guy. And I thought, it's base level, but I was into wrestling and I was into lucha, like Rey Mysterio. And this one's obviously got more, like, obviously it's got no prominent, like, American wrestler in it. They're all from Mexico. But I liked it at the time. It's just one that it gives me like a nice feeling because of the nostalgia associated with it.
I've not seen it.
So when I have to mention Royal Rumble again, I don't want to hear any shit. Yeah.
What's your 10 number?
My number 10 is The Longest Yard.
I haven't seen it.
Neither have I. But
I like a lot of dumb Adam Sandler comedy. It's got a ton of wrestlers. Kevin Nash is in it. Khali's in it. I can't do a lot of Adam Sandler today. But when Adam Sandler came out, I was, when anything came out when I was a kid, I was very big on Adam Sandler. And it's a lot of fun. I bet that...
You're more in the hibbity-dibbity kind of area.
Yeah, I like that.
Stop looking at me, Swan versions of...
So, The Longest Yard is on my list, mostly because of how many fun interactions you get with wrestlers. Because I thought about putting the Waterboy in this spot just for the 30-second cameo with Captain Insano, but I went with The Longest Yard instead.
I will say the Waterboy is my number 10 for the cameo list for me.
Very fun.
Is it on either of your lists?
I mean, it's not on my... I don't have a specific cameo list. I just have one single list, but it's not on mine.
Yeah, it didn't make mine either.
Yeah, my cameo list, I'll do that and do my top 10 with that too. My number 11 was Running Man because of Jesse Ventura. He plays a fun character in that. But number 10 was Waterboy, and Captain Insano is a great scene. Obviously, he's not a huge part of the movie, but he is featured enough that they call back into it later on, where he's still on the football field and he's thinking back to Captain Insano. We still haven't seen what AEW wants to do with Captain Insano because they trademarked it, but we could see the return.
We saw him in the Acclaim music video.
Oh, that's right. I didn't see that, and I forgot that people were mentioning it. That was a part of that. I
forgot which video it was, but he did that. I hope that's not his only thing, but I know that he at least did that.
Yes, we might see more Captain Insano in the future, and maybe that becomes more of a talking point. I don't know. My number 9 cameo, we already talked about it, was the High Chief Peter Maivia in You Only Live Twice. So again, we already talked about it, so whatever. But my number 9 for my true list is a recent movie with Bautista, Knock at the Cabin. M. Night Shyamalan movie. I recommend it. Not my favorite M. Night film. That would be Unbreakable. But I thought that this was rock solid. This was an interesting story. And for anybody who doesn't know, the story is that this family is at a cabin for vacation, and these people come up to them and they basically hold them hostage and say, one of you needs to die, and if you don't, the whole world is going to end. And I don't want to explain anything else because that's basically the hook of the whole movie is, the fuck you mean? And he's really good in it. He plays a character that's essentially like the gentle giant, brute kind of guy. You know that he's menacing, but at the same time, he's kind of comforting in the way that he talks to them and all. So I fully recommend Knock at the Cabin. That's actually a pretty solid film.
I haven't seen it yet. You guys are giving me a lot of movies that I now want to go and see.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out as well. I'm yet to see it, so I can't comment.
Legitimately, I would say, there's certain movies on this list that are like, okay, it's fun, but it's dumb. I'd be like, no, if you are interested in that tension, thriller, mystery kind of angle, yeah. So what's your number 9s?
My number 9 is Rocky 3, which we have already discussed, but I like the whole wrestler versus boxer thing they do. I think it's a funny scene. Hogan plays a great heel in it, which is obviously in contention with what he was doing with the AWA at the time, but this was a very prominent thing for him. It pretty much put him on the map on a national scale. And I think that it plays off things they have done in the past of actually doing boxer versus wrestler matches, which have completely gone off the rails, like your Antonio Inoki versus Muhammad Ali, or Mr. T versus Roddy Piper. And Mr. T is obviously the main antagonist in this movie, but he's not an Ivan Drago antagonist. He's an antagonist that you can kind of get behind a little bit. And this is where you also see the closing of the relationship and the greater friendship forming between Rocky and Apollo Creed. Yeah. So I think it's a pivotal move in that, because that sets the scene for Rocky 3. I do agree with you, is one of the more forgettable Rockies in general. It's definitely below Rockies 1, 2, and 4 at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say it's even below Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, but
it's like,
Rocky 5, it's better than.
oh yeah, everything's better than Rocky 5. But I think that still, without this movie, you can't get to the Ivan Drago Rocky 4.
Yeah.
So I still think it holds a level of importance here. And at the end of the day, like Mr. T was a fun guy to watch whenever he's performing. So yeah, I still like it. Well, I wouldn't put it on this list if I didn't. But
Never seen Rocky 3. You really think I would, because Thunder Lips, but I will get around to it. Again, this is
Have you seen the other ones?
I've seen 2, 1, 2, and 4. I haven't seen 5, and I haven't seen 3.
It's weird. Like, those movies are very much like you do have to watch all of the movies for them to make as much sense, even though for the most part, those movies are like, you really only need to see a couple scenes in each movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you need to see if he dies, he dies. You know.
Well, like what Callum was saying, like you have to watch Rocky 3 to understand what's going on in Rocky 4, particularly for like 3 scenes in Rocky 3. But you don't need to watch, like, you really don't need to see that there's like a robot that Paulie has for this franchise. You know what I mean? Happy birthday, Paulie. What's your number 9, Rob?
Number 9, I'd like to preface this and the rest of my list by saying I just put movies that entertained me. Batman and Robin, because it is embarrassing how many times I have watched this film. It's not the best Batman movie
by a long shot.
It might even be the worst, depending on who you ask. But it's charming, and it's lighthearted, and it's fun. And I think we've known each other long enough at this point that you understand that's my whole thing. So I love the fact that a wrestler actually plays Bane. Would love to see Bautista do that in the future. I think the nipples on the Batsuit is ridiculous. I really just wanted any excuse to talk about ice puns and ice to meet you and
the Ice Age.
It's a movie that we need to watch, and I push this every year. Please, let's watch the 4 Burton-verse Batman movies because they're good. And we need that in our lives. My number 9 is Batman and Robin for the smallest of the professional wrestling.
For Jeep Swenson as Bane and Jesse Ventura as a bodyguard.
That is correct.
Now, if you are into the Batman side of things, not only would I say that it's definitely something that I think you should try to do the pick your poison for those films, because that's something that it would be a whole lot of fun. But also, you should be checking out The Batman, A Nighttime Story, 100 records from the Wayne Foundation archives, because this is part of my Blueprint project. I have been talking about this for a long time, and I have the first part up of my explanation of just what the hell the Blueprint project is for anybody who doesn't know over on Fanboys Anonymous. But I have also recorded chapter 1 and chapter 2, and I am about 95% done editing chapter 1 of A Nighttime Story, where I give you a synopsis of what this is all about. And, you know, I'm reading off some of the dialogue that I had written, but I'm also just basically pitching to you what my overall narrative is for these 100 stories of the entire history of Batman. It's an insane project. It is one of many that I am working on. And this, more than honestly anything else that I'm working on, this is my biggest passion project. So if you want to help support the Blueprint project when it comes to Batman or Power Rangers or Superman, I'm literally falling asleep last night thinking of Superman stuff to add to my list of, like, maybe I'll go with this title, and Up and Away can be accomplished here, and this looks like a job for Superman, can be put in this spot. And I almost ended up writing a note to myself of, like, maybe I'll call the Daredevil story Heaven Sent, a Daredevil epic. You know, like, there's so much that I want to get deep into when it comes to that stuff. So the more Batman, the better. The more Blueprint project, the better. The more support that you give to Fanboys Anonymous and the Blueprint project, the more you will see crazy, crazy stuff. And, you know, tweet things out. Tweet out hashtag Batman Blueprint, the hashtag hire Mango DC Comics. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. But the more support that you give for that, the more that I can even come back and do more wrestling stuff. You might think that there's no connection, but there really is. I would love to do only wrestling and the entertainment stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's something to stay tuned to. Definitely check out some more Batman stuff.
Number 8.
The number 8 that I had for Batman and Robin on the cameo list that, we already talked about that. My number 8 being on my main list, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. What's yours, Callum?
James Bond, Spectre.
So that's my number 7. Is it on your list, Rob?
It is not. I didn't think Spectre, it wasn't one of my favorite of the Craig films. Obviously, that goes to Skyfall and Casino Royale. And I'd wish that Bautista got a chance to be a little more in that movie instead of just he says one word. It's a good word. But he says one word, and I would have liked more from him there.
Now, as we've said before, we did a whole breakdown of every single one of the Bond films over on Fanboys Anonymous. It's part of a series called A Review to a Kill. So if you are a Bond fan, not only should you be sponsoring the Blueprint Project, because that's part of it. Crazy enough, you wouldn't think that it necessarily would be, but yeah, there is crossover. Even Star Wars is a part of that. But A Review to a Kill was such a fun series for us to do. And Spectre was not the highest ranked by any means, but we're looking at a list of wrestler movies featuring wrestlers, etc. It goes higher up on that just by proxy, because it's like, look, it's still a Bond film. And I'll gladly watch Spectre more than, well, everything but 6 other things on this list. I'll say that. It's still like a good performance from him for playing a character that's only got one line, like Rob said. He's a more menacing henchman than we've gotten from anybody in the Craig era. Everybody else is just like Patrice is just like a guy, and Elvis is garbage. But Mr. Hanks has a little bit of a gimmick to him with the fingernails. He's got an interesting death sequence. Not to spoil, but yeah, the villain dies. Let's get to another Bond films and then boo. But Spectre is not high up on my Bond list, but it is high up on this. It's my number 7, so might as well talk about it like that right now. You have it at your number 8, Callum, for a lot of the same reasons, I'm sure, where it's kind of like, look, it's not the best Bond film, but it is still kind of fun, and Bautista's good in it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Bautista has a good role in it. Again, not most prominent in terms of henchman or speaking, but like he plays the role that he needs to well. Like his character is essentially not mute, but stays silent for the most part. So I think that adds to the menace of the character. And yeah, it's not the greatest Bond movie of all time, but it is better than a lot of rest of the movies that there have been.
And better than You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
Some ways.
Oh yeah, definitely better than that movie in my perspective. But
and I'd like to piggyback off of that by saying I won't say much here because we've already talked about it a lot. But my number 8's Ready to Rumble. I was 7. Go fuck yourself.
Ready to Rumble, not on my list, not on Callum's either, I'm assuming.
No.
What is your 7, Callum?
The Mummy Returns.
Haven't seen it.
I love the Mummy series. I think, well, I preface that the Brendan Fraser Mummy series, not anything that Tom Cruise touched.
I actually thought that the Tom Cruise Mummy movie wasn't all that bad.
It probably wasn't, but like I really like the Brendan Fraser Mummy series. I think it's really funny, but it's also like it gets dark in the places that it needs to be. Like there's a lot of, I say gruesome because it's not like you see a lot of like blood or gore or stuff like that, but some of the deaths are really kind of quite harrowing in a lot of the Mummy movies. And I know The Mummy Returns, if we're talking from the rest of the context, we most famously remembered for the most awful CGI that has ever graced the movie screen.
I have seen that scene.
We're talking about Die Another Day?
All right, maybe the second worst then, but it's definitely high up there. But the Rock Scorpion monstrosity is just it's not CGI's proudest moment, but the movie in general is a lot of fun. I don't think it's definitely not as good as the original or the first Mummy, but it still has its moments. They've got a kid now, so like the kid plays a big part in the movie as well, trying to rescue him from the circumstances. It's about essentially Imhotep, the main villain, the actual mummy, trying to revive his mistress, like from the dead, as well as part of this. And then it's about how Brendan Fraser and what was her name, Rachel Weisz's characters. I can't remember the character names off the top of my head, but how they basically help fight and take them down in the same time killing the Scorpion King, because I think the Scorpion King was killed by Imhotep's forces. I mean, that's the thing, is that the Scorpion King is a prequel to The Mummy Returns, because he's dead by the time The Mummy Returns happens.
That's what Kelly Hu, I think, is in the movie too. She's like the love interest for the Scorpion King or whatever.
Yeah, but that must be in the actual Scorpion King movie rather than Mummy Returns. But yeah, I really enjoyed that movie. I've watched it loads of times as well, because it's one of those movies that in my childhood was always on. Like
just like on TBS or something.
Yeah, there's certain things my mum there's certain things my mum would always watch. Like whenever she just found it while scrolling through the channels, it'd be on. So it was Mummy or The Mummy Returns. It was Jaws. It was things of that ilk. Would just like, it's just like some channel is showing one of those movies.
Yeah.
So if it is, she's gonna find it, and so it's just always on. So I got used to watching. I did eventually, like later on, get down to just like sit down and watch the movie from start to finish. But most part, I could probably just retell the movie just from the clips that I saw and just weaving them together. Whenever I just went into the living room for a little while.
That's a whole thing that this generation of kids, they don't know. Like, I mean, you used to just be like, okay, well, every November is the James Bond marathon on TV, and I don't like the movie, but like every Christmas they just run the same bunch of movies, and they have like whatever channel it is, they run A Christmas Story.
TBS.
TBS. And it's just like 24/7 that movie, and some other ones are, they always run It's a Wonderful Life. So it's like, you might not have actually watched It's a Wonderful Life, but you've probably seen the whole movie because it's just been on TV all the time and all. What's your number 7?
Number 7? Oh, The Wrestler. We talked about it already. I thought it was a great movie.
My number 7 on the cameo list, I don't think it's going to be on anybody's main list. Kevin Nash in The Punisher. This is the Thomas Jane Punisher. He plays the Russian, who is actually a comic book character. So it's like, oh, like you've got like a legit comic book character role by you, but it happens to be a character that doesn't speak. He has one fight sequence he
gets legitimately stabbed.
He got like legit stabbed, like Kevin Nash.
Yeah.
Huh. How'd that happen?
There was a mistake. I forget, but I've seen him talk about this. There was a mistake where he ends up actually getting cut by the knife.
Nice. Was Sid holding the knife?
Glad that he didn't actually get burned by the boiling pot of water that happens in the movie, but Kevin Nash is good in that as like the big brute. My number 6 on the cameo list is also Kevin Nash in Grandma's Boy. That is a movie that I cannot recommend to a lot of people, and I bet if I rewatch that now, it's probably awful.
Yeah.
It's probably really fucking stupid and not funny. But when it came out, I remember laughing a whole lot. I remember Kevin Nash's scene. He's just like a mover, like just, packing up boxes and stuff. And he's just like eating chips and not moving things. And it ended up being like one of the funnier parts of the movie. So just a cameo. Thought it's a fun one. My real number 6 is Predator. And I said it before, Jesse Ventura is one of the show stealers in that movie, which is just complete fantasy of like that action machismo bullshit that you used to get. And I really wish that we could still get those kind of movies, because man, they can be so fucking fun. And Predator is honestly one of the better movies that's in that whole genre, for not just Schwarzenegger, but like anybody, like a Stallone film or obviously a Seagal film, because they're all garbage. But Predator's actually got like some good parts to it for that. It's not Oscar caliber by any means, but that's a fun fucking movie. I love Predator.
We've talked about him a lot, so I'll just be quick here. But my number 6 is Kevin Nash in Secret of the Use. Because I love Ninja Turtles. Love that movie. And finding out later that that was Nash, just like, it makes it even more cool. You know? The
That
live action
is
Turtles.
higher up on my cameo list. But go ahead.
Live action Turtles, like, obviously, as I've talked about with a lot of things, I prefer them animated. But they're great movies. They're iconic for their time. And it's easy and fun to sit down and watch while you're eating some popcorn.
What's your number 6, Callum?
I already mentioned it as Jumanji, the next level. So I've already spoken about that, so we can move on from that.
The Jumanji, the next level, going up on number 6. My number 5 on my cameo list is Tyler Mane, who was apparently Big Sky in WCW. And for anybody who doesn't know who Tyler Mane is in the movie, he is Sabretooth in X-Men. X-Men's a rock solid superhero film. Now, I didn't want to necessarily give that a spot on my featured part thing. I really could have, to be honest, because that's the type of movie that, you know, he's around there long enough. He plays one of the featured henchmen and all. But I was just like, you know what? I mean, he doesn't really have any lines in the movie, so I'm just going to kind of push that off to the side and give a spot to the Princess Bride, which we'll talk more about. But he looks like Sabretooth. Like, you know, Sabretooth is not the type of character that you need to have like the biggest acting chops for. He pulls it off. He does a damn good job. My real number 5, though, is a different superhero film. The Suicide Squad. Specifically,
save it.
The Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad. I'll put a pin in that. Okay.
Save it.
Number 5 is on your ends.
We've talked about this, and I don't know if we're going to keep putting a pin in it, but my number 5 is The Princess Bride.
Keep a pin in it, please.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's Caleb's number 1. That's why.
I think we just hit two of our tops. But
might be. I mean, if we end up doing that. Cal, what's your number 5?
Moana.
That's my number 4, so we can talk about it now.
Yeah. I mean, you got to sometimes just love a good Disney animated or movie. It's Disney, isn't it? It's not Pixar, this one. If I remember
Disney.
correctly. Yeah, it's Disney.
It is Disney? It's not. I thought it was Pixar. Huh.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because they used to have distinct styles and then now they all look the same.
Yeah. But this movie is... The music
Phenomenal.
in this movie is just phenomenal. It's just some of the best songs that they've ever put together. Like You're Welcome and just like Moana's song. I can't remember the actual name of the title of it. It's the one where she sings like she's going to go to sing. Yeah, How Far I'll Go. Yeah, and Shiny. Just such fantastic music. In this
I did not like Shiny.
I like it.
Okay, how good are the other 2 songs that we?
Yeah. No, I mean, like, You're Welcome is obviously a great song. And Shiny, for some reason, it just didn't sit well with me.
Yeah, but and the story is very good as well about this girl who's basically contained within the island and is just desperate to see the wider world, and is forced into it eventually due to these terrible events that are afflicting the island. So it kind of like just is thrust upon her to go out there and explore the ocean, come across like the Rock's character. And yeah, it's a different version of the Rock because obviously he's just an animated character in this one, but he does have those same sort of traits, but he's not as, he's not as all action in the way that the Rock is. So I think it's a great movie. I've only seen it like a couple of times because it's one that I just like save for a few occasions, but it's one of my favorite Disney animated ones, I say.
This film is one of the films where The Rock playing The Rock and just not trying to do any voice acting, just using his voice, it really lends to the character of Maui. Maui, perfect in that, like, almost like heel Rock, where he's very braggadocious and he's very full of himself. But as the movie goes, they pull back the layers of that, and you see more of like the positive Rock that he's kind of become today. It's just a very good movie, and the movie itself is so good that it made Randy Orton cry. Randy
Really?
Orton cried while watching Moana, and I think that that's good enough argument that everybody should go see it. We should talk more about Disney movies on Fanboys Anonymous.
We have one of those things on our ever-growing to-do list of our Mount Rushmore of Disney songs. Is something I like. No matter fucking what, I got to figure out a way for us to do that at some point this year. Moana's not on my list, but
You suck.
it is a movie that I fully recommend for a lot of different people. Yeah. My number 5 on my, or number 4 on my cameo list that I was like, I can't justify making this on my actual list. And obviously it would be super high if I did, but Zeus, Tiny Lister, is in The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
he is.
I tried to justify doing that one
Right.
at some point, but if I was going to stick to, okay, that's just too either small a role or just not prominent enough that I can even recall it happening. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell he was in it. So I just thought, I've got to leave it. But Dark Knight is one of the top of the top superhero movies I've ever seen.
Correct. That is a correct statement.
Show more support for the Batman A Nighttime Story, and you might get information about maybe I put that scene in something. Yeah, I mean,
Ledger doesn't die in mine.
Technically speaking, Heath Ledger is not my Joker in mine. It's more of a combination of Killing Joke and Batman the Animated Series Joker. But
no, it's Hamill. It's Hamill because
right.
Hamill's the best Joker.
I mean, if you're gonna give a voice to it, it's Hamill. But The Dark Knight's just it's fucking great. You know, it's one of the best comic book films of all time, and it should have been nominated for Best Picture that year, and it's bullshit that it wasn't. Now, here's another movie this is my number 4, my real number 4, that I honestly think is legitimately one of the absolute best movies that has ever had a wrestler in it. And it should have been nominated for much more. It should have won awards that it didn't win. Like the lead actor should have probably won Best Actor maybe for that year. I recommend it to an insane level. My number 4 is Man on the Moon.
I haven't. See, I know that's going to be good because I know the story behind it, but I haven't watched it.
You have to watch it.
Probably put Man on the Moon on my list. I love Andy Kaufman. I love Jim Carrey. It was a great movie.
Yeah, both of you have to watch that to double check it or whatever. Jerry Lawler is so good in it. He's playing himself, obviously, so that's easier. But the fact that he's able to, with just a little bit of facial hair and, some makeup and everything, basically seem like they legitimately got Jerry Lawler from back then and Andy Kaufman because of the way that Jim Carrey plays him so well. I mean, I've watched a couple of Andy Kaufman documentaries, and I still feel like Man on the Moon does a better job. It's legitimately a really, really good movie. And I think as far as performances go, I mean, it's got a lot of wrestling in it. It's got a pure wrestler in it. It's got Jim Carrey, which of course is a major positive. And you got Danny DeVito is playing a great part in it. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, the only reason why that's not number 1, 2, or 3 on my list is because the other ones are movies that I've watched a little bit more often, but I've seen Man on the Moon maybe like 4 times or so. And every time I watch it, I get a deeper appreciation for it. So if you were going to ask me like the best movie, it would be number 2, probably. But, I mean, it's great. So Man on the Moon's my number 4.
There's a lot.
Check out,
There's a lot of bad press these days around method acting and the way that actors behave, and I know that that's a huge chunk of what Jim Carrey did for that film, but he is spot on. And I would also recommend the Netflix documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And is it Andy and Me?
I think it is. Yeah, but I mean, if it's like a companion piece, like you should watch Man on the Moon and then you should watch the documentary.
Absolutely.
So Rob's number 4 is Moana. Callum, what's your number 4?
Again, because I had to have a separate cameo, list to
Right.
the main one. My number 4 is Spider-Man.
That's my number 3.
That is my number 3 as well.
Oh, look at that.
Bonesaw is ready. Like, it's such a good movie. Okay, listen. I've obviously talked about a lot how much the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies are my favorite things to come out of like that era of early superhero movies. But Randy Savage in this film, I think this is the last time he really looks like he could probably go around in the ring, and it's such an easy cameo. And Randy Savage is the perfect wrestler cameo because he just has that voice, and it's 3 minutes, guys, but it's such a good scene, and it's just an excuse to talk about the fact that that is such a fun movie. I don't care what anyone says, it holds up.
It does. It's one of the absolute best superhero films.
So good.
Yeah. I would say I absolutely love the Tobey Maguire series because I think that the second is the best. That's why I kind of, if it was the second one, I probably would have pushed it higher up, but I still really enjoy the original one. I think that this one also suffers from some bad CGI.
Yeah.
You know, that was just the rule at the time.
Or it's
But,
not even technically
and
CGI, the one shot where it's just Kirsten Dunst holding on to a completely frozen picture of Spider-Man.
But and I'm also one of the people that is a bit of a defender of Spider-Man 3. I don't think it's as bad as people say it is.
Ooh.
It has one bad scene.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
have to
about
go back and rewatch that because I'm sure it's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be.
I've talked ad nauseum about how the biggest problem in the movie is Sandman, I think, more than anything else. But that's again, if you
casting of Venom, but that's
if you want me to go into a deep dive, I could talk for fucking hours about just that movie alone. But yeah, it's not the time.
See, no, we won't talk about it. But like I would argue Sandman's one of the best parts of that movie. So we'd have to probably be in big disagreement with that. But yeah, Spider-Man 4, you get Randy Savage in it, and that's obviously the reason why it's on there. But just overall, it's just a great movie.
absolutely
The start of I think actually like a really important franchise for this whole superhero movie vogue that we have.
Oh,
I think this needed to be successful.
Yeah, it's instrumental. We're not getting the MCU of Spider-Man isn't good. And Spider-Man, again, man, blueprint project. Let me tell you, the amount of deep dives that I've done on just this one Spider-Man movie alone, you would be like, Jesus Christ, Tony. But one of the things I always found funny about this role and Randy Savage being in there, for anybody who doesn't know the history of the comics and everything, this Bonesaw McGraw character, that's not the character in the comics. The character from the original story, which it does follow pretty well, the idea that Peter creates this shitty costume and he tries to get some money by being a part of this pro wrestling thing, which nowadays, not to spoil too much about the blueprint for Spider-Man, but it's probably better off if it's MMA rather than wrestling. Hint, hint. I go with MMA.
it's costume. It's the theatrics. It's the Amazing Human Spider.
I don't want to spoil how I do it instead, but the character in the comics is named Crusher Hogan. And when they did this movie, I still didn't know as much as I know about Spider-Man at this point, but I was well aware of Crusher Hogan and the whole story and all. And then it was like, oh, Randy Savage is going to play Crusher Hogan in this? That's kind of funny. Wait a minute, he's playing Bonesaw McGraw.
I wonder why they changed it.
And I was like, well, that makes more sense to not have Hulk Hogan be in there and to do that or whatever. But he was patterned somewhat after Hulk Hogan. And I'll just say that Bonesaw McGraw is so good that Bonesaw McGraw is in my blueprint. And there is a roundabout way for me to have both Crusher Hogan and Bonesaw McGraw. I'll say that. It's my number 3.
Spider-Man fight the Mega Powers. Dude.
Again, I don't want to spoil too much. Let's just say they're both in my blueprint. So, hey, remember, show more support for the Blueprint Project. I want to talk more about this stuff.
Oh, you're going to keep talking about... Well, my last 2 films continue to be superhero films.
Mine do and they don't because let me say my number 3 on my cameo list is another movie that I had recently just watched. I had only recently watched The Princess Bride. I had only recently watched Knock at the Cabin, of course, because that was something that just came out a few weeks ago. But only a week or so ago, I finally got around to watching John Wick. And there was a scene in the movie where a character is looking across the street and you could just barely see that there's like a bodyguard standing in front of a door. And I'm like, is that Kevin Nash? Just by the way that he's standing. I'm like, I think that's Kevin Nash. And he pops up in there and it's like, oh, he's playing this like Russian bodyguard type guy or something. And I'm just like, yeah, you know what? Shout out to that. Because if I'm going to go with movies that have a character that happens to be played by a wrestler in there or whatever, I mean, that's fun. So that actually should not have been number 3. I don't know why I have that listed as down as number 3. But that should have been number 5, and I should have been bumping up Dark Knight and X-Men. I guess my list is a little bit wrong here. But I don't think John Wick's on either of your lists, right?
Nah.
So then let's go to Callum's number 3.
Before I get into these 3, I just want to point out that obviously the whole premise of this is like some of the it's the favorite movies with wrestlers, so it needs to obviously have that like caveat in it. But I will say that the next 3 movies are not just my 3 favorite movies with wrestlers in it; they're also among probably 3 of my 10 favorite movies of all time, just in general.
Nice.
And number 3 is Guardians of the Galaxy.
That is my number 2.
Put a pin in it.
Okay, we could talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
I know that's high up there.
I will say
I wrote 3 Spider-Man for you.
Spider-Man.
Well.
Yeah. Since my list was all, I put it in the wrong way. The one movie that I didn't mention already from the cameo list was Mad Max Fury Road with Nathan Jones. Good movie, better than I thought it was going to be. I remember it got nominated for Best Picture, and I was like, the fuck you mean this is nominated for Best Picture? I guess I'll check it out. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. But my number 2 on my actual list is a movie that I had no idea had a wrestler in it for all these years. And then when I started looking up these lists of wrestlers that have been in movies, The Godfather. Yeah. You would go like, wait, what? Like, Al Pacino's not a wrestler or whatever. Yeah. Lenny Montana, who plays Luca Brasi in the movie, apparently was a wrestler. And I'm like, fuck it. If that gives me the opportunity on a Smark Out Moment podcast to talk about The Godfather, I'm putting it out there. It is my classified number 2 best movie of all time. Very, very, very closely almost tied with The Shawshank Redemption. It's a movie that I hold near and dear for a million different reasons. Not only is it one of those movies that like my dad and I connected with, but it's the fucking Godfather. It's so good. And Luca Brasi's great. Great character in it. Lenny Montana plays a great part. They actually, for anybody who knows the movie and knows the Luca Brasi character and all, his nervousness when he's going to talk to Vito Corleone about the whole, like, thank you for inviting me to your daughter's wedding and all, was not a part of the actual story. That was actually just Lenny Montana being nervous. And they're like, hey, why don't we just incorporate that? How about your character is also nervous to talk to the Godfather? He does great in it. And I can't sing enough praises for the Godfather. So that gets my technical number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Fair enough.
What do you guys got?
I said I have Guardians. What do you got, Kel?
Ed Wood.
There's your Ed Wood one, yeah.
Yeah. It's my favorite Tim Burton movie, my favorite Johnny Depp movie. It is... I love the fact that I get to talk about this on a wrestling show, thanks to George Daniel Steele, to talk about this on a Smark Out Moment or any podcast. It's just such a good movie. And it's hard to describe because it's shot completely in black and white, start to finish, even though it's like a 94 movie. And it tells the story. It's like obviously a very enhanced retelling biopic of the world's worst director, Ed Wood. who's like famous for the awfulness and the budget quality of some of his movies. His Glen or Glenda or Your Plan 9 from Outer Space. And I got because I remember as a kid, as you know, you just occasionally just find yourself just scouring through Wikipedia, just looking at stuff and just seeing what stuff pops up, and then I just find myself on a list of worst movies of all time, and I see. Basically, you just scour through the 1950s, and you just see Edward's name just pop up over and over and over again, with some of the absolute trash fire movies. And then I see just turn in and see 94 Edward. It's like, oh, I know that story, and so I'm just like, oh, there's a biopic about that. Okay, I'll check that out and just watch it. And I'm mesmerized from start to finish. Johnny Depp gives such an amazing performance as this guy who clearly is out of his league in terms of being a director, has no real creative vision, but is so fueled with absolutely ludicrous optimism and ambition that he just will keep going at it, try and hustle people to get as much money as possible to put these films on, but they're all just absolutely terrible. And then, but really, the powerhouse of this movie is Martin Landau's role as Bela Lugosi, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least got him nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I think he might even have. Did he win? Yeah, he won Best Supporting Actor. Yeah, at the 95 Oscars for this role, and it's just he plays that role to perfection. Just this old, withered actor who was in the horror movies in the 1920s and 30s and silent era and stuff like that, playing Dracula. And then he now transported into the 50s and 60s, where he's now just a deadbeat, junkie old man who just stumbles into Edward one day, and Edward starts casting him as the quote-unquote star in a lot of his pictures moving forward. And just, there's powerhouse performances throughout the entire thing. Bill Murray's in it, in an actual supporting role, not even best supporting actor role, but it's he plays at that point in time, it's like someone who wants to undergo a sex change to go for a man to a woman, and that's kind of his thing. And you have Sarah Jessica Parker play Edward's initial girlfriend, and then you have, I believe it's Patricia Arquette plays Edward's girlfriend following her after Sarah Jessica Parker's character leaves. And it's just really, really, really fun movie, and I recommend it to anyone to watch if you haven't seen it already.
Definitely going to have to download that and check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Me on it.
My cameo number 1 was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. Super Shredder, fuck yeah. And Rob, you didn't say your number 1. I didn't say my number 1. We know Callum's number 1 at this point, though. But let's go around here. Rob, what is your number 1?
Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad.
The Suicide Squad over there. So we'll do one by one. Callum's number 1's Princess Bride.
Yes, yeah, the Princess Bride, yeah.
So that was another one that we had put a pin in. And the other one that I said put a pin in, that was, you guys had already mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. I decided I'm going to be cheating and be a little cheeky with it and just say my number 1 is the MCU, in the sense of, look, it's Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. I'm sure Guardians 3 is going to be a lot of fun. Drax is in Thor Love and Thunder, which is not all that great, but I mean, it's the Drax thing. So we got Drax, we got Suicide Squad, we got Princess Bride. Let's start with the Suicide Squad. John Cena is Peacemaker in it. He went off, did the spinoff of the Peacemaker TV show. Both are fucking great.
Specifically because of the spinoff show and how good he was in that movie, when the original Suicide Squad was an absolute abject failure, that I was just they're so charming in this movie. And John Cena is great as Peacemaker. He's literally playing the character that he played for at least 10 years on WWE TV, but turning up the asshole and the kind of obliviousness that would come with a guy who just believes that he is the spirit of America and has this pet eagle, and like I love it because it was made for John. And on top of that, Margot Robbie is just the best Harley Quinn. She's kind of ruined the character in some ways because of how good she was as Harley Quinn. And that whole movie did such justice to the Suicide Squad idea. And it was just my favorite. And it's easily, like, if I didn't know John Cena was John Cena, I'd still love it because he's so good in that movie. And it's perfect.
He kills it in that movie. He's the standout for sure. And that's saying a lot when you got a movie where Sylvester Stallone plays King Shark. And you've got, Harley Quinn, and you've got fucking Starro is in a movie. Like, that's insane. And Ratcatcher and Polka Dot Man. Like, there are wild ideas in this movie. And if you are not sold already on kind of blanking on his name, but the Detachable Kid, I think is his name, the guy whose arms pop off and that's his superpower. And the opening scenes that are in this, that's enough. But John Cena is going to be the selling point for it. And if you like the Suicide Squad and you haven't seen the Peacemaker show, you have to. It is so good, of just this over the top, ridiculous. This guy thinks that I could take Batman in a fight type of person. And yeah, I'm just as good of an assassin as everybody else or whatever. Like I killed, I think he says that he killed like Killer Moth or something like that. Like, it's, you take a character that is not prominent in any form in DC and you make it one of the ones that actually is probably going to stick around with the new James Gunn version of the DCU.
Likely because of how good John was. And in a sense, it's kind of like Drax and how Bautista, first, like, Guardians should have never been a thing. The fact that Guardians is a thing is because superheroes became so hot. But like now Bautista is probably going to forever be linked to the MCU and to Drax because he was so good in the role.
So you guys want to talk about MCU or do you want to talk about Princess Bride? I'm down for either of them to go next.
I'm going to talk about the Princess Bride for a bit.
All right. So my history of this was a few weeks ago. We were talking about this and I was like, I still haven't seen it yet. And then Callum was talking about how it is his arguably favorite movie of all time. So I was like, I definitely have to watch it before we do this. And I just sat down one day. I just said, hey, Caroline, do you want to watch it? And I know I would like this movie more if I had seen this as a kid. I know for a fact. But I still ended up actually enjoying it a whole lot. Like, it's charming. It's funny. It's got no part in it made me just go like, all right, this is kind of dragging or this is stupid in like a bad way. It's silly, but it's charming. And Andre the Giant doesn't play the biggest part in the role. He does play the biggest part in the movie, but you know what I mean? Like, he is not the Princess Bride, obviously the titular character or whatever, but he plays a character that immediately you're just kind of like, I like this guy. And yeah, for a movie that I've only just recently watched a couple weeks ago, that definitely doesn't resonate with me as much as it would if I would have seen this as a kid. I still immediately was like, yeah, that's going to be at least in my top 10. But you are way more qualified to talk about it than I am, Callum.
Yeah. It's quite interesting that you say that you would have loved this more as a kid. I was in my 20s when I first saw this movie.
Really?
And I just think it's a perfect movie. Like, I don't see any real resounding flaws in anything. I think the story it tells from start to finish keeps you engaged. I think it's built as at the start. It's just like a love story, and it's a grandpa telling his kid this story in a book, and how he becomes more engaged with it is part of the story as well. But then it's just, I can't speak highly enough about how great an actor Carrie Yules is. He's in some of my favourite movies of all time. He's in Obviously, there's this. There's Robin Hood Men in Tights.
My favorite comedy of all time.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. And Saw as well. He's one of the main characters in Saw.
Yeah, he's a
so
doctor.
It's just like, yeah. So there's a lot of range in terms of just like, this is a great fantasy movie, that's a great comedy parody movie, and that's a great horror movie. So it's like you just have all that stuff combined. But I think that he plays his character so well. He's so funny and sharp and erudite, and it's just like he's got such a fun character. You've got to talk about Benito Montoya, and it's just like his story and his arc throughout it is so great to follow as well. Just finding the Six Finger Man, just managed to stumble across the Six Finger Man as part of the part of the Prince's Guard, and it's just but that's just the way it goes. And it's just like, it's not, they don't like say like, oh, that's super obvious that it's you involved in it, but it's just like, it doesn't feel like it's forced in. It feels like, oh, that's funny, because it's just like it's a story and it's a fantasy book, and it's just like you can just buy into that being the case. And the sword fighting scene is amazing, and Andre's a great character in this as well. He doesn't have, like, as I say, he doesn't have the biggest part in it, and also it's sometimes hard to figure out what he's saying because of how thick his accent was at this point. I think he's only a few years, sadly, away from passing away.
Right.
But like playing that gentle giant kind of role. I love the fight scene that he has with the fight scene with Wesley, where it's just like he's hanging across his back and he's explaining to him why it's more difficult to fight one man than it is to fight like a horde of 10 people. And it's just like just doing that, and then knocked out, and then saved I Hope You Dream of Large Women.
Yeah,
just so funny. Like this movie, and like yeah, you just have like the zini and the drinking thing, and the fact that like he puts poison in both of them because he's immune to that poison. It's just like, it's all
inconceivable.
Yeah, just saying the word inconceivable. Oh, you keep saying that word. I don't think you know what that means. It's just like, there's so many funny lines and so repeated lines in here, and then it's like, my name is Inigo Montoya, and you killed my father, prepare to die, and then they go through the fight scene towards the end of it. Then like Peter Cook as the priest. It's like the clergyman just saying loud, like, it even says in the credits he's titled as the impressive clergyman. It's just like him just going on about marriage is an institution, and it's just like, he's just so funny. And yeah, I love every single aspect of this movie, and I've watched it ever since I first watched it. I make it like an annual tradition to at least watch it once a year. It's just so good. I've introduced friends to it and they love it. And yeah, I can't say enough high things about this. Speak highly enough of this movie. I never can see any flaws in it. Every time I watch it, I just love it even more.
And this is one of those movies that's iconic as far as like the wrestler in it, because I mean, I can even name a movie that specifically talks about it as part of the movie. I Love You, Man. They have a whole sequence where they talk about Andre the Giant in The Princess Bride, and Jason Segel even is like, the whole anybody want a peanut, like, it's like you dedicate a part of your movie to talk about another movie and that character in there. So it's not even like, hey, Andre's in it for a couple scenes, but whatever, it's like he plays a fun character in it.
Yeah. I was like, it's so well put together. I didn't mention like Billy Crystal was Miracle Max, and how funny that whole scene is as well. It's like, just like having to puppet. It's just like he's only nearly dead, not actually dead. That's gonna be a whole other issue. It's just it's so much fun.
You got it at number 5, Rob.
Yeah, it's a tremendous film. I can't add too much more to what you guys have said. I'll also say, getting, I almost called him Ben, that's his brother, getting Fred Savage as the kid, like, perfect timing. Everything that happens here, this is the last thing Andre does before Mania 3 with Hogan. Like, this is just a huge time for all of these people to come together on this movie, and then it's just such a fun, iconic movie. It's not something you're going to find randomly on TNT like you would a Batman vs Superman or something, but it's one of the classic movies of all time. And yeah, it's phenomenal.
So my number one, as I had said, I just lumped in all the MCU stuff because it's, at this point, it's like, well, if I were going to put every single one of those down in there, that would just take my whole list because I'm like, yeah, Avengers Endgame is fucking great. Avengers Infinity War is fucking great, whatever. But Drax is not the character in the MCU that I would have as like a top 15 even favorite character. But he is somebody who I had no interest in whatsoever before Guardians came out. And I remember distinctly, and there's probably even some articles out there or something on Fanboys when they started announcing Guardians, because I was just like, you're going to do a Guardians of the Galaxy movie? Really? The thing with the fucking raccoon and the tree and the green guy and the green girl.
And now they're one of the institutions.
And I was just like, all right, this is where the MCU falls off. We've gotten this lead up to the Avengers and things were cool. And now they're going to experiment. They're going to do these dumb ideas and it's all going to be fucking terrible. And it's just going to be too jokey and it's already coming off too much like a comedy. And I just think it's going to suck. And then I watched the movie. Yeah, I eventually did start to get there a little bit. But I watched the movie and I go, God damn it, this is one of the best ones. And if you could see on Smark, or not on smarkmemo.com, but on fanboysanonymous.com, the recurring tier list that I have for every project in the MCU, Guardians is consistently in that upper range. It's easily one of the best movies. Just, you put that on, you don't need to watch the rest of the movies to enjoy that one, which is something that I know applies to Callum because he has not watched all the MCU films. But you do get, of course, a higher, richer enjoyment if you've watched all the other things. And, Guardians 2, of course, factors in with other things. And you certainly have to watch all the other movies to care about Infinity War. But Drax went from being a character that I had no interest in whatsoever to being like, he's actually a fun part of this. And then he eventually became a character that he went a little bit too much into the jokey stuff at sometimes. But he's got some of the best moments in some of the other movies too. Just the whole sequence in, I think it's Infinity War, where he is talking about how if he stays perfectly still, nobody can see him because he becomes invisible.
So fucking funny.
And he's just like, watch, see, you can't see me. And he's eating chips at the time. He's like, yeah, I can see you. You're right there. You're eating chips. And he's just like, no, I'm imperceivable. Whatever. The bit with like Mantis and her powers and everything, he showed me through this Drax character. I was like, okay, Bautista can act.
You mentioned the you can't see me, see I'm inconceivable. And I watched it recently, about a couple of years ago at this point, but I had seen it and I was dying at the idea of Bautista not understanding the throat slit motion.
Oh yeah,
I've never seen that before. And
what does this mean?
That's so funny to me because he's Bautista, and how many times didn't he square off with Taker? Those are dumb things that you're not supposed to laugh at, but as a wrestling fan, you laugh at. And as you said, I think this role kind of proved, okay, Bautista's gonna make it. I think this is the role that kind of took his career to the next level and saved it in a lot of ways. Again, not the most iconic Marvel heroes, but because of this era, will go on to be.
Yeah, performance like what Bautista put in for this helped make Drax a character that is kind of a household name at this point. And a couple years ago, I remember when Thor was coming out, and people are like, they're making a Thor movie? What the fuck? And me being like, yeah, people know Thor, but, whatever. And hey, maybe it'll catch on. And at this point, it's like you could talk to somebody's grandmother and be like, so name a superhero. And they might name Drax. That's so weird, Yeah,
and to kind of wrap up how important all of these superhero films have been, I know not you guys so much, but I have recently been back on dating apps, and every fucking person is like, "Oh my god, Marvel, Marvel, Marvel!" It's like that's wild to me. You know, that's absolutely insane, and it's all because of it started with the X-Men movie that you mentioned, Tony, then transitioned to Spider-Man, and everything since then has just helped these things grow. And I feel like wrestlers can now always shoot for maybe I'll be in the next MCU film, or maybe I'll be able to be in a Batman film. And these performances have proven maybe they're gonna make it off of one of those movies.
So what you're saying is Hollywood these days owes Randy Savage and Tyler Mane.
Absolutely. Maybe not Hollywood, but wrestlers definitely owe Tyler Mane. I think we can all agree. Big sky for Hall of Fame.
So, any other thoughts on Guardians before we round that topic out?
I mean, it's the Marvel movie that resonates most with me. It's just as you said, it's not something that most Marvel movies have kind of passed me by to the point where it feels like it'd be such a commitment to go back and try and catch up with a lot of them now, to the point where I'm just either going to need to block out a load of time or just forget about it. The Guardians is one that I can always just go back to and just watch, because it's at least with the first one, it's so far out of the rest of the universe at that point that you don't really need to. And that's really where you kind of get, I don't know whether it's the first introduction, because again, I haven't watched all the movies, but it's one where Thanos is quite prominently featured. So
second movie that he's in, but the first time that he actually has dialogue, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you get that prominent thing, and obviously Gamora's relationship with him is an important point as well. And then, but yeah, just from the moment that Star-Lord walks in and What's the Matter with You starts playing, and it's just like Come Get Your Love starts playing on this song, and it's just like, I just knew that this was going to be so much fun, and it proved to be, because it's just, yeah, there's a lot of comedy in it, but there's a lot of great action, and it's a lot of team building, and yeah, I think it's from all the Marvel movies I've watched, it's my standout favorite, and yeah, one that I as I feel comfortable going back to watch, because I know that I don't need to watch several other movies to really get what's going on in it.
Have you seen the Suicide Squad?
No, I have not watched the Suicide Squad. You
should check it out, because they're both James Gunn. So it's like there's very much a Guardians feel to the Suicide Squad.
I think it's one that I might check out, but I'm kind of, I'd also burnt out on superhero movies. But I'm kind of like, I've got the ones that I go back to, and I'm kind of good with that. It's kind of like I've got my original trilogy Spider-Man. I've got the new ones with Tom Holland. I've got Guardians of the Galaxy, and like a couple of others, and obviously pretty much every Batman movie up until pretty much all the Christian Bale ones, and everything up to the Batman, which I still haven't seen, because I don't know when I'm going to commit like 3 fucking hours just sitting down and watch one movie. But to
be honest, it's good, but it's a little overrated in some ways.
Yeah. But so I'm kind of like, I've got my fill of superhero movies that I need to go back and watch. Really, I might tune in eventually, but it's not something that I'm really desperate to check out.
I'd recommend it though. We had a lot of recommendations going on.
Oh yeah, well, these are some of our favorite movies.
Yeah.
Among these ones, so it's that would definitely recommend it to other people. If you haven't watched them, then you should check them out.
Definitely.
So we are 2.5 hours into this, but we did still have one other element to this whole trifecta, which is the Mount Rushmore concept.
Yeah, might have to speed round it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to try to do a top rope list of the way that set up, because obviously our stuff is all over the place, but we do have the option, I think, of doing 2 Mount Rushmore lists. One being wrestler actors, and the other one being the movies in general. I would say most likely we're probably looking at John Cena, Bautista, The Rock, and I don't know about who else for the Mount Rushmore for the wrestler actors. Do you guys have any other ideas or alternatives or anything?
Well, those three are the standout ones. They're three locks in there.
And I thought of Hogan just because.
Yeah, Hogan is potential. I'd say that you could put. I'm trying to think. There was another one that was coming to my head, but Hogan's Piper would be the other one that I think could be potentially. And then you could also go with
Nash is in a lot of these. You can go Kevin Nash.
Like,
yeah, you go Kevin Nash.
Do you go Kevin Nash to be kind of the representation of the cameo side? Because, like, yeah, I would go Kevin Nash more than necessarily like a Nathan Jones. But there is that whole side of it of being like, well, they're not actors in the same, memorizing their dialogue and doing all that. They're not putting on the same performance, but they are doing work that needs to be done in these movies. Like, I could see putting Kevin Nash in there, and he's done some acting parts as well. I haven't seen like Dog. I haven't seen
Magic Mike.
Magic Mike. No. I would say one movie that we haven't talked about yet, but we did just do a thing about. I'm not going to put Kevin Nash's tag team partner Scott Hall on here for his performance in Big Money Rustlers.
It was the best part of that movie.
Shout out to Marquise for sponsoring that for the Pick Your Poison tier. If you want to go back and check out that movie and watch that with Rob and I for the fan tracks, it's over up on Fanboys Anonymous. That does have Scott Hall in it. I could say without a shadow of a doubt, it is my favorite movie that includes Scott Hall, Sabu, and Jimmy Hart at the same time. Because it's the only one. But yeah, I could see maybe Kevin Nash being the fourth one on there. I could see maybe Jesse Ventura being on there. I could see maybe Hogan. Yeah.
We didn't even get into like all of the El Santo stuff where he's just wrestling the Wolfman and the Frankenstein.
And Mil Mascaras as well, doing all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously we haven't even talked about things that are like new and in this range, like that Rey Mysterio Netflix thing. Like we haven't even watched that, but
we didn't touch on the cinematic masterpiece that is Pro Wrestlers versus Zombies. But
yeah,
we didn't even dive into like wrestling documentaries that got turned into movies, like Beyond the Mat and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, that's another whole element to it. There's
so much to cover. Yeah,
there's actually a lot of crossover here. It's like Tony said in the beginning. It's very surprising how more challenging this was.
Mm-hmm.
I could actually make an argument, like, if you do want to go with Kevin Nash, the fourth person in that thing, I could make an argument for Jesse Ventura.
I could see either Nash or Ventura making the most sense. I mean, Hogan is, like, the most prominent ones. But his movies, they're just terrible. So,
yeah. I'd say Nash, because I think he's done more and turned it into more of a career.
Yeah. I mean, and my other option would be Andre, just because he is in The Princess Bride, and I think that it's not just because it's, like, my favorite movie. I think it's among, like, our favourites, and it's one of those movies that's like so fondly remembered. But as I say, he probably would need a more prominent part in it to push him up there. But yeah, so I'd go with either Nash or Ventura. I'd lean more to Ventura just because of Predator being such a prominent movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'd allow it.
Well, we got John Cena, we got Bautista, we got The Rock, and then the other one would be like that. We do have enough that we could do the B tier for that, because at the very least we got Kevin Nash, Jesse Ventura, Andre, Piper, Hogan.
And those three, that'll be 4 and 4.
And there are other people that are in other movies, but most of them, obviously,
we're not putting the Miz in this.
Big Show and
we haven't even touched on the Miz.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a single movie that the Miz has been in, so I couldn't even say. And like, yeah, Sheamus is a pretty prominent villain in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Out of the Shadows, but I'm not going to just like throw Sheamus on there. I would say maybe A tier being Cena, Bautista, The Rock, and I guess maybe Kevin Nash, just for the part of being like, well, he's been in more. And then B tier being Ventura, Andre, Piper, Hogan.
I can
it's
set one.
Pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Now movies. I mean, we all have like the MCU stuff. We all have Princess Bride. We all have Spider-Man.
Moana.
There's Moana. It's not on my list, but it's something that's like, yeah, I mean, I can understand that. Suicide Squad's not on Callum's list, but that's super high up as well.
Yeah.
We got movies that like we kind of go like, okay, well, we all think Batman and Robin's fucking fun, but you know what I mean? It's a different story. I would say at the very least, we would lock in Princess Bride and the whole Guardians idea. Yeah. And probably Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man too, because we all had it at either 4 or 3. So
yeah. Spider-Man would be in there as well.
So then it would be whatever the number 4 would be.
Either Moana or Suicide Squad, because we each have that and one guy doesn't.
I'd say that's because Suicide Squad is at least number 1 for Rob's, because I've got my number 1 in there. You've got your number 1 in there, so I think Rob's number 1 should go in there as well.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fair.
That makes sense. So Suicide Squad being that, and then B tier being Moana. And then maybe,
I mean, you guys can't put Edward in it because you haven't seen it. So.
Yeah, so
because it's hard to do a B tier here because we all.
It is. It's probably too hard to do a B tier because like Man on the Moon, Ed Wood, even Predator, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle versus Jumanji Next Level. Yeah, we probably couldn't do a B tier, but. Yeah, Moana would probably end up being in that B tier range. And then that just becomes one of those things where it's like, yeah, if everybody watched Man on the Moon, if everybody watched Knock at the Cabin, if everybody watched
Ed Wood, I'm definitely
Ed Wood, maybe even if I rewatched Rocky 3, like that could potentially end up jumping up on my list.
Who knows? Lateral Libre might actually be better. I don't remember.
Maybe, I haven't seen it, so maybe I'll check that out too. But that's one of the easier Mount Rushmores that we've done. That's pretty quick. Well, pretty quick, but 2.5 hours worth of setup for it. But the Guardians of the Galaxy concept, the Princess Bride, the Suicide Squad, Spider-Man, which that makes sense too. Like we got a cameo role in one scene for Spider-Man. We've got a supporting role for the Princess Bride. We've got a higher up supporting role in Suicide Squad, and then we got one of the main roles in the MCU side. So we kind of spread the wealth there. It's got some superhero stuff. It's got some comedy. It's got pretty much all you can ask for, except for obviously these guys are not in, a Scorsese drama or romantic comedy musical or something. Still, though, there is such a wide variety of the wrestler in movie/TV concept that we could have talked for another 2.5 hours easily about everything. I mean, we talk about just the movie Spectre for 2 hours probably on that podcast. So if you do want more of this discussion of WWE and Hollywood crossing over and the potential of things in the future and things we haven't gotten into of just like, hey, what movies are we interested in that's coming out in the future for these people? Or, watching some of these movies that we haven't seen to do some fan tracks or some fan announce tables or anything. There is so much more that we could dive into. So go ahead and sponsor that stuff by being part of the Patreon or on the YouTube members only subscription side of the membership side of subscribing. I don't know why I said it that way. That's absolutely ridiculous. My brain just decided to repeat things a bunch of times. But the best way outside of that, if you're looking for like a free method of supporting this, is to let us know that you want us to see, to do more of this. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Say, yeah, man, guys, I want you guys to do more. Or, spread this around, pass this so we get more clicks on here, more likes. Anything that goes to show that you are enjoying this and that you're digging it. We'll try to do more. And obviously, when these movies come out that haven't yet, or when we talk more about different movies, or if we discuss the movies that we have seen that we're going to go back and rewatch or anything, tweet at us, post up some stuff up on the Facebook group, the Megamaniacs, keep the discussion going in whatever way that you can. While you're doing that, go over to fanboysanonymous.com, show some love over for that, because if you are into movies, then you should definitely be supporting the Blue brand. Facebook and Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, everything over at fanboysanonymous.com. It's all fair game for helping out on that front. Show more support to the Batman Blueprint and the Blueprint Project in general to get more of that stuff. If you are into that, check out that first chapter of the Batman at Nighttime story coming up soon over on fanboysanonymous.com and the YouTube channel. Make sure that you are taking part of the Dusty Roads Funko Pop contests that we got going on. Make sure you are voting on the Smark Madness tournament. Make sure you are staying tuned to the hot tags coming up later on this week. That'll be the next time that we talk to you guys. In the meantime, make sure you are also going to anthonymango.com and checking out all my different social links that you can see there, including the Letterboxd if you want to see just some more movie content from my side of things. Make sure that you are following these guys as well. Rob?
Yeah, you can follow me everywhere at Dude Police. You can check out my writing on Fightful and WrestleZone. And honestly, even this Smark Out moment, I really feel like we should just be plugging more of the fanboy stuff. That review to a kill on Spectre clocks in at just over 3 hours and 50 minutes. So
350 or 315?
Yeah, 50.
We all have 4-hour review.
Yeah, a lot of these later ones clock in at about 3 to 4 hours, so there's so much content.
That just goes to show you, if you get passionate, Tony, I don't shut the fuck up.
That was a great series. Hope to do more of it in the future. Check out everything Dude Felice related at Dude Felice, and I'll have more stuff coming soon, but for now, here's Callum.
You can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Over on Smark Out Moments, you can check out the power rankings, my weekly contribution, and as we're getting closer to WrestleMania, we'll see who is sitting on top of the rankings up until then, and yeah, who's propping up the leaderboard as we go into those final things. Speaking of leaderboards as well, you'd be checking out the Fantasy League at www.fantasyleague.com or through the Smark Out Moment navigation, where we're just about 4 weeks away from finding out who will be the victor at WrestleMania, and yeah, who will win this season's one. There's a lot of points still to be picked up, especially at WrestleMania. So stay tuned for that for all the latest scores.
Alrighty, everybody. That is our discussion for this trifecta edition of Wrestlers in Hollywood. And if you enjoyed it, let us know. And also make sure that you are staying tuned for what we got coming up soon, because we do have another round of the hot tags. We are going to be getting into more of the WrestleMania stuff, of course, the closer that we get to it. It's funny enough, it's crazy. We still don't have anything to talk about when it comes to the Hall of Fame, that we are this close to it.
The most we have to talk about it is that
we don't have anything to talk about it.
Recently reported that people have been told it is indeed still happening, which seems bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And this weekend, Caroline and I are going to the Madison Square Garden show that's happening on the 12th. So might end up putting something out about that. You know, it'll be my first time at MSG. It'll be her first wrestling show, period, that she's ever gone to. So if you actually are in the area and you're attending that show, let us know. We'll meet up with you guys. But that might be a dark cast. I'm not too sure. We might do something together. I might just do something on my own. I haven't quite decided, and we probably won't decide until actually that night. But we might do an episode of Hall of Lame next week. We might do something based off of the Hall of Fame members if we know more about it the week after that. Plenty of shit happening on the end of the month when we get to ROH Supercard of Honor, NXT Stand and Deliver, WrestleMania, the Hall of Fame itself. That's going to be a crazy, crazy week, but we do have other fun things in the meantime. So if you stay tuned and you make sure that you ring that little notification bell, you get those email alerts of when we go live for things or when we just post things in general, then it'll be easier for you to pop up and to join us on all those discussions, and we will see you when we see you. That's it for now, though, everybody. Thank you for listening to this. Adios. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.